Hey guys, there's 22 people on the live.
Alright, okay, alright. Fuck that shit. Yo, what's up? Hey guys, give me one sec. I didn't just wake up, it's just that, I'm organizing my room. Don't worry, I'm gonna get the lighting and everything. Okay, let's get to work. Hold on.
Yo, what's good, man?
Yo, what's up? Hey.
I'm hella big. Well, I didn't like this.
How's it going?
It's going great.
But yeah, I guess I'll introduce myself. My name is Coco, or people call me Coco on here because my page is The Controversial Compass. And like one of the reasons I don't really believe in the Christian God, I'm an agnostic though, so I'm open-minded to like the Christian God.
Okay, so you believe that? So you think there is a God, like just a God?
No, I don't hold to like any gods existing, but I'm open-minded to it. I'm just agnostic about it. But like, yeah, like I have like several issues with the Gospels, and like I don't really think that they're first-hand accounts. And like, yeah, I find issues with them.
You got any evidence to back that up?
Yeah. So typically, like, it's gonna be like a stacked case. There's gonna be like several things that are contributing to like why I find them to be like unreliable. So for one, like Jesus dies in 33 AD. And I think that like he dies in 33 AD. He sticks around for a while, but then he leaves like 33 AD. Around that time, right? And so Christians will say that like the story of Jesus's life is being passed around via oral tradition. Until like it's finally written down, because parchment is kind of like expensive. Only the elite have access to parchment, and then they finally write down everything in your earliest gospel, which is going to be Mark, right? So given that, sorry, my brain's waking up. So given that we get Mark, then we get Matthew, then we get Luke, and then John is like the final gospel, or the one that's dated like the latest. What I think happened is general consensus is that Jesus is a Jewish preacher, apocalyptic preacher, but I don't grant that he did any of the divine stuff. I think like everything that's written about him that's divine is probably just like the story of Jesus being passed around by word of mouth, and then over the years becoming more and more miraculous as time goes on. And like we have evidence even now, right? Like court cases don't really take witness accounts too seriously, because it's been shown that people get robbed and then they go to court like a week or a month later, and they struggle to remember the details of like what happened in the robbery, or like what the person looked like. They might even get the person wrong in some instances.
Exactly. I feel like I hate to interrupt, but I feel like you're totally good. I feel like you're just disproving your own point, because it shows that they have a unity of thought. Okay, there's no contradiction in the Bible, right? We can agree on that, roughly.
I would disagree.
Yeah? Okay, we'll get onto that later, but we believe there's no contradictions in the Bible. And if there is no contradiction in the Bible, those eyewitness accounts which have been spread across, they went and spread the word by oral tradition, if they're all so correct and they're all so similar and they all work together, it kind of proves that there's something influencing that, which would be the Holy Spirit or God.
Well, yeah, so there's like a variety of reasons like why I wouldn't trust them, right? So for one, like the Gospels are written internally anonymous. The authors don't identify themselves. And like, let's look at Matthew specifically, but like technically all of them are Greco-Roman writings, right? They're autobiographies and also like first-hand accounts. It's very rare that Greco-Roman autobiographies or first-hand accounts don't identify themselves. I have a list in my notes of like 15 different authors, including Tacitus, who in their works they identify themselves to some regard, right? But when it comes to these Gospels, they don't really identify themselves, so we don't really have any names. Until like Irenaeus. When Irenaeus writes in his work against the heresies, he identifies all 4 gospel authors. And the reason that I don't really trust Irenaeus is because, one, we don't know like his process, and also two, against the heresies was speaking out against other people who are saying or making claims that they had writings from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, right? So a bunch of people were making these claims. We don't know how they're getting these names, and Irenaeus is writing against the heresies to speak out against other people he claimed to be heretical, and claiming that they had some kind of writing. So
they're getting the names from the oral tradition, which is what we were saying, like how they speak. They went out and preached the Bible without writing it down, and they just heard that and then went along with it, and then educated Greek Christians and
Oh, but how do we know that? And even with oral tradition, like how do we know they're correct, right? The authors are not saying anything about like their names being claimed to these writings, and then like oral tradition, like how do we know they're getting like the names from oral tradition?
I would go back to how they all agree. Like, for example, in Matthew, it would mention something about Peter, okay? And then in Peter, it would, like, it's not like they have different names in the Bible, is it? Obviously, they have different translations, but it's all the same. All the different authors are using the same names and the same storyline, and they all agree on, like, the similar train of thought. So that's how I would.
Well, yeah, but also, like, Matthew and Luke, I think, are known to be copying off of Mark, and Mark is writing on behalf of Peter. So it's kind of expected, like, sure, maybe they would agree on stuff.
Is it proven they were copying off Mark, or were they just writing the same stuff? Because
because when we read Matthew and Luke, right, like there are literally whole paragraphs that are exactly like what's written in Mark, especially like when it comes to Jesus recruiting Matthew. Like the verses read like word for word the same, except like there's a little bit confusion between like whether it was Levi or Matthew, and like I have an argument there, but that's a whole different thing.
Yeah, so you say they copied. What's to say they didn't just use it as a source, as like instead of using the oral tradition? Because obviously after a while, it's gonna get contradicted and it's gonna get distorted. They would use the earliest written down one, which is obviously Mark.
Yeah, I got my Bible here. Which ones are copied?
Yeah. So I can give you like an example. So yeah, like the reason I'm saying that Matthew and Luke are copying off of Mark is because there are literally paragraphs that you read in Matthew that are word for word the same with paragraphs that are written in Mark. And Mark is the earliest gospel, and Matthew and Luke are coming later. And yeah, like even like biblical scholars would agree that like Matthew and Luke are copying off of Mark. So like for example, the one that I brought up, it's going to be about, let's see, hold on. It's going to be about like Levi. Where is it? So I'm looking at my notes.
So I got my notes at the ready.
Hold on. Shoot. Oh yeah, PRK I know PRK wants to come up. He's always talking about this stuff. But yeah, wait, PRK, you would say too that Matthew and Luke are copying off of Mark, because like literally there's paragraphs word for word that are in both of them.
Yeah, it's like 80% or more of the content is about the same.
All right, so show me one paragraph that's the same.
Okay.
It's gonna be pretty easy to do.
I can find it.
Okay, I got my Bible open right here.
Okay, yeah. So when it comes to Matthew 9:9, right? Like I can read it for you.
I'll fact check it.
Matthew 9:9 says, "As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax collection station, and he said to him, 'Follow me.' And he got up and followed him." Then when we look at Luke 5:27 says, "As this, he went out and he saw a tax collector named Levi sitting at the tax collection station, and he said to him, 'Follow me.' And he got up and followed him." And then when we look at Mark...
Wait, hold on. Matthew 9:9 tells me Wait, no, that's Matthew 8.
Yeah,
No, but still, that's just them saying the same story. It's not directly copied.
Well, no, but like they were saying the same story, but it's like word for word. Like,
Wait,
it's
so
like similar.
Which is, if
So
something
wait.
happened, right?
Yeah.
So say you got up and sat on that bed. Okay, right now, is that bed? Okay, it doesn't matter. And me and Confetti were to write what you did. It would be almost the exact same.
Well, yeah.
Let's go back to what he's saying. So Matthew 9:9, as Jesus passed on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax office, and he said to him, "Follow me." So he arose and followed him. So you said which one copies it?
I said Luke 5:27, but also look at like Mark 2:14.
Okay, let's look at Luke. You said Luke 5?
Yeah, 27.
It does say the same thing. I didn't. The wording is slightly different though, so it's not like,
It's slightly,
so
but
Luke-
like it's almost like word for word.
it's not
So
wording.
Luke, you said Luke 5:7,
Luke 5:27.
5:27.
Yeah.
Okay, 5:27. Matthew the tax collector. After these things, he went out to the tax collection, and the tax collector named Levi sitting at the tax office. He said to follow him, follow me. He left and rose. Yeah, it says Matthew the tax. It's the same story of
Yeah.
Matthew the tax collector.
Yeah, but like the wording is almost even the same between both of those.
But it's
Because
not.
it's the same story.
Yeah. So yeah.
About
And
Matthew.
My analogy with you sitting on the bed.
Yeah,
They say
and
the
then
same
like
thing.
this is the case for like a lot of the literature between Matthew, Luke, and also Mark. So Mark is your earliest dated gospel, and like Matthew and Luke are coming later.
But
And,
this one is
like,
clearly the same story, though.
Yeah, and like a lot of historians would say that like Matthew and Luke are copying off of Mark because when you read Matthew and Luke, literally they're talking about the same story, but like the words that they're using exactly are in Mark. It's like word for word almost exactly in Mark. So they would suggest that like Matthew and Luke are probably copying off of Mark and taking inspiration from Mark. Especially since Mark is writing on behalf of Peter, and Peter's sort of the leader of the group.
Amen. I see you started.
So wait, were all of these men alive at the same time?
I mean,
They
according to
could
the
have
Gospels,
been.
yeah.
It's not implausible that they were.
Yeah, so
Oh,
they're all
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
alive at the same time, right?
Yeah, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were.
They could have
all
been,
alive.
yeah.
So it's not like anything like it's stories copied from 1,000 years later or nothing, right?
Well, okay, so here's my argument, right? So, these guys were. I mean, if we grant the Gospels, these guys were alive at the same time, right? But there was Christians will say that there's oral tradition. I've been talking to Christ before Jesus. He says something about like there's no oral tradition. Like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, wait, Christians have been saying this, but I have to look into it and see. But okay, I'll grant that it was oral tradition, especially given the culture at the time. The problem is there's this oral tradition happening, and nothing was written down for decades, because if it was, we'd be able to date it closer to Jesus's death or Jesus's life. It would be a contemporary. It's not a contemporary. What we have is that your earliest gospel, the closest thing to like Jesus, is going to be like 60, 70 AD, and that's like decades after Jesus. Jesus died and left around 33 AD.
Yeah, but
So
Coco, that's not.
with
Wait,
this
really quick.
repeat. So who's Levi?
So go ahead, PRK, and then I'll answer that.
So yeah, I was just gonna say, if he is writing in 70 AD, let's say, he would have access to people who knew the disciples or early Christian communities that would have had some type of oral tradition that goes back to the disciples, plausibly. So I would consider that too. I mean, Mark could definitely be having a legitimate preservation of oral traditions that were circulating amongst like very early Christian communities. So that's something you have to consider.
My only problem with like oral tradition is that like humans are fallible, even like the best humans. And like yeah, like I'm gonna refer to like court cases, right? Like people get robbed, and like a week later go to court and they can't even get the details of who robbed them, like their face features correct, right? So yeah. So like imagine if like within like a week or months. Details about a certain story can get scrambled and people's brains can't remember accurately details 100%. So imagine you have those details going from person to person, multiple people for decades, and then finally we get it written down in like 60, 70
But
AD at the earliest.
But it's still the early church community that would have probably known
But then even
a lot
looking at
about
where you
Jesus.
guys are saying that it's repeated, Matthew doesn't say which house they went to have a feast. And when you look at it in Luke, Luke specifically says they went to Levi's house to have the feast with the tax collectors.
Well, yeah, but like Luke
real
is
quick, I'm interrupting. But a second ago, you made that point where our words would get corrupted, right? We're not fallible, yeah?
Yeah.
Surely you think there would be a lot more contradictions and stuff in the Bible, right? Than there is.
Well, yeah, so like if we're focusing on the Gospels, that's where my other issues come in, right? So Mark talks about Jesus's life, and it's going to be the earliest Gospel. Then when I look at later Gospels, they're talking about stuff that Mark didn't even mention, which is they're leaving out like whole events. Wait, but all of them are supposed to be Greco-Roman autobiographies and like first-hand accounts of like Jesus.
Yeah, but Mark didn't see everything Jesus did, same as Peter. They all seemed like they weren't always there all the time, were they?
So how are they like first-hand accounts? And like they were the followers of Jesus.
They are first-hand accounts, but like what Matthew says, what Matthew sees and what Luke sees aren't the same thing.
Okay, so let me give you an example. I think John. Okay, let me look at my notes. So, if I'm gonna be correct, I think John talks about Lazarus raising from the dead, right? Given that, oh shoot, where'd he go? I was gonna talk to that guy, but John talks about Lazarus raising from the dead. Was Mark, Matthew, and Luke not there for Lazarus raising from the dead?
What Bible verse is that?
I can find it. Let me see. Let's see. John talking about Lazarus. Okay, so it's basically going to be John chapter 11, the death of Lazarus.
Okay, I'm right here.
Okay, yeah, so John talks about it, but when it comes to Mark, the earliest gospel, Mark doesn't talk about it, Matthew doesn't mention it, and Luke doesn't mention anything about Lazarus.
Okay, so wait, let's see who was all there, bro. So the death of Lazarus. Now a certain man was sick, Lazarus of Bethany, the town of Mary and her sister Martha. It was that Mary who anointed the Lord, fragrant oil, wiped his feet. Oh, Jesus. So, okay, so saying that Martha was there and Mary was there, and obviously, like, John had to be there, right? So, I'm telling the rabbi.
Yeah. You're saying Mark, Matthew, Luke, like all those guys that were walking with Jesus, they weren't there for Lazarus being brought back from the dead? I mean, like, I find that to be implausible. I mean, they're all witnesses of Jesus' entire life, almost.
Yeah, that's a good point. You would expect them to mention.
But then you just said, like, how certain things being repeated is a contradiction. Now you're saying it's a contradiction that is not being repeated.
Oh, no. I didn't say it's a contradiction. I was just saying that, like, Matthew and Luke for sure copy Mark because there's word for word paragraphs.
Yeah, but then you'll say that they copy. You say that they copy things, but then in the same like breath, like you'll say, well, but they didn't copy this part.
Yeah, they copied most of it, right? There's some things they didn't copy, yes.
Yeah.
And this detail is only found in the latest gospel, and it's not found in the earlier gospels, and it's a really big detail that you would expect the earlier gospels to mention. That's the point.
Yeah. So this is what I expect, right? Like, so in today's world, whenever a cop arrests, let's say 5 people, if all 5 of those people say the exact same thing and they don't change a single word, that means that those 5 people made up a lie to tell the cops, right? But if the cops arrested 5 people and they're all talking about an event and the words slightly change a little bit, right? that means they're telling the truth. It's varying. They're capturing different perspectives. So what we see in the Gospels, right, is that Mark, the earliest Gospel, is it talks about Jesus' life, but it doesn't mention certain events that like Matthew, Luke, or John, later Gospels, mention. So it seems as if like Mark captured Jesus' life, and Matthew, Luke, and John are adding things, right? Why didn't Mark capture a different perspective? And sure,
Yeah, but like Mark captured the cleansing of the leper though.
yeah, but like, I mean, did any other gospel capture the cleansing of the leopard, to your knowledge?
Yeah, and then Jesus heals a paralytic.
Sure, Mark captures like certain miracles, right? But why does he leave out like other miracles? And also, like, how many gospels talk about the cleansing of the leopard?
Well, it's because it's like when they bring the amalgamation of the text of the scripts, right? It's like, sometimes it's about who wrote it better.
Well, yeah, but like, I mean, that still doesn't explain why like all of these are supposed to be like Greco-Roman autobiographies and first-hand accounts, and like that doesn't explain why some people are leaving out whole events. Even like another example would be like Matthew talks about how Jesus rose from the dead. There was an eclipse and people rose out of their graves and started greeting people. Matthew talks about that, but no other gospel mentions that. So Mark didn't witness it, John didn't witness it, and Luke didn't witness it. An eclipse,
but then,
and
like,
people rising out of their graves.
why would we continue if we're reading it like a book and a story? Why would we continue to repeat things?
Because that's what you would expect, right? These 4 people were witnesses to Jesus's life. What you would expect is that they all talk about the same events, but they vary in slight detail, right? But that's not the case. Earlier Gospels are just leaving out whole events, and later Gospels are introducing these events. So what I'm going to probably think is that as things were getting spread around word of mouth, it seems as if the story of Jesus was getting more miraculous as it was spread word of mouth. As later Gospels that are dated, that are finally writing about Jesus later, are including these details that early Gospels are not including. So it's like there's more being added to the story of Jesus as the Gospels are later.
I don't know about that because it's like all the other texts are like verified, bro. Like,
what do you mean by verified?
I mean, like, dug up and like carbon dated.
Well, I mean,
They're
sure.
carbon dated.
Well, I mean, sure. Like, yeah, they're dated.
They use paleography.
Yeah, I'm not
Like,
sure.
even like, for example, like the story of Enoch, like
that's not part of the canon.
It isn't, but like it's like these scripts, they exist and it's like I don't want to say at the end of the day because I hate when people say that, but it's like when you come together and you're writing a book with different authors, like you're gonna like leave things in and leave things out, to like make it a more flowing story.
Well, I mean, like, do you think that an event as significant as an eclipse and people rising from their graves, like Mark would leave that out?
I mean, Mark, if you look at his book, he talks about the plot to KIL Jesus.
Yeah, but like what I'm asking is like why did he leave out the eclipse and people raising from the dead, like tons of people?
Because then he has a story about feeding 5,000 people.
Well, I mean, like, but if his goal is to talk about Jesus's life and like all of the miraculous things, right? I think the resurrection is going to be more important than any other miracle that Jesus did. So it would be expected that Mark would talk about the details surrounding the resurrection, especially that an eclipse happened and people rose out of their graves.
I mean, but like, who talked about that? Matthew, right?
Did. Yeah, but Matthew is a later gospel, and like Mark didn't talk about it. So what I'm assuming is that Matthew added to the story of Jesus. Mark, that's earlier than Matthew, older than Matthew, didn't even mention this eclipse or people rising from the dead.
So you think that Matthew made it up?
No, I'm thinking Matthew added it. Yeah, for sure. And also, I mean, like, also because not only is it not present in earlier Gospels, we don't have any other first-hand accounts to verify this. Sure, like Matthew talks about it, but then even later Gospels, like John comes after Matthew. He doesn't even talk about, like, the eclipse and people rising from the dead. We have no other first-hand accounts of this eclipse and people rising from the dead.
So you think the apostles were lying?
Well, the apostles probably didn't write those
Yeah,
gospels.
I'm even saying, like, I don't think Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John wrote the Gospels. Like, I would even make that claim.
So who do you think added it to it?
Unknown authors. We don't even know, like, who the authors are. Because, I mean, sure, like the...
So you think that the people just came along and was like, you know what we finna do, bro? We finna boast up Jesus. Let's say that he, did this thing and that thing. Like,
Yeah, it's
so
good
people,
literature.
Well, yeah. Do you know how many pieces
so
of
people can
literature...
think he's greater than he was.
Well, yeah. So, like, do you know how many pieces of literature were left out of the canon? There were tons of stuff written about Jesus, doing all sorts of magic, but a ton of that stuff was left out, and only these Gospels were kept in. So, I mean...
I think that they probably kept in what was verifiable.
Well, like, I mean, they're not. I mean, for a multitude of reasons, right? So, Mark's the earliest, and, like, I don't know the order. I have to go do research on it. But Mark's definitely the earliest. John is the latest.
Okay, have you been to Jerusalem?
Well, like, I don't see how that matters, but, like...
because, like, look, I'm gonna tell you right now, bro. If you go to Jerusalem, right, bro, they have plaques every place where Jesus performed the miracle.
Okay,
like,
sure.
you can go to, like, where the miracle was performed.
Well, yeah, but we need to verify that, right? Because, like,
it's not.
Like,
no, that's what I'm saying. To truly verify it, you need to go there, bro.
Well, yeah, but, like, it could be the case that those are tourist attractions, right? Like, there are people who came out and said, like, we had Jesus' sandals, but when we, like, actually investigated it, it wasn't Jesus' sandals. It was just some made up, like, tourist attraction.
I mean, kind of, but, like, I mean, like, if you're the descendant of Jesus, like, because Jesus had a brother, like, would you tell everyone?
Yeah, I'd probably be telling everybody and trying to write it down if my brother was raising from the dead and an eclipse was happening and we had people raising from the grave.
No, but I'm saying, like, if you're a current day descendant of, like, Jesus's brother, like...
Yeah, I would be telling everybody.
I think that they keep it secretive, bro.
Which, like, that's kind of weird and, like, unorthodox. Because, like, I mean, yeah, so another one of my contentions is, like, Matthew is a Greco-Roman autobiography and first-hand account, and he's written anonymous as well as the other Gospels are written anonymous, and this is not a common practice amongst many other Greco-Roman autobiographies and first-hand accounts. They all, like, identify themselves in the literature.
I think that, like, the language switched to Greek because, in Hebrew, a lot of things, the Hebrew language is a very evil language. So, right. Like, some things in English, like consecrate. Like consecrate, right? So, in English, consecrate means to, like, to anoint. In Hebrew, it means to sacrifice.
Oh, I mean, but again, like, these, like, I'm not really sure how I feel about that. Because, like, when it comes to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, I'm assuming that they all spoke Greek, but, like, I'm not sure.
Yeah, but, like, that's why it was kind of, like, that's why that's the Old Testament, because it was, like the Hebrews, they were able to, like, listen to God, but since their language translated God's words wrong, that's why they would perform wrong things, like...
No, yeah, so, like I would grant that, like, the Old Testament is written in ancient Hebrew. That was kind of the language of the time, right? But then, okay, when we look at the New Testament, the language of the time was probably going to be, like, Greek or Aramaic. And I think that's what Jesus and his followers spoke or used. So,
yeah,
of course, like, I would expect that.
I would love to learn Aramaic, but it's a pretty difficult language to learn.
Yeah. But speaking of that, like, yeah, I looked into it. I'm still looking into it. But, like, there's this... I'm not sure if he's a scholar... But there's this guy named Camille Gregor who talks about, like, all these other sources that are Greco-Roman autobiographies and like first-hand accounts that identify themselves in the literature, right? Tacitus in Agricola identifies himself in the literature. Plutarch identifies himself in the literature, and Themistocles, Cornelius Nepos.
In what literature?
In the stuff that they write, they identify that they're the author. They're writing that stuff, at least at some point in the literature.
In the Bible, or where are they?
Oh no, this is external to the Bible. These are other works, right? So I'm saying like it's normal for the writings during that time for the authors to say like, hey, I'm the one writing this, or make some kind of reference to their writing the literature, right? But with Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, with the Gospels, they make no attempt at all whatsoever to say like, I'm the one that wrote this. And actually, what's really interesting is like when Matthew is talking about that scene that I told you about where Jesus recruits the tax collector, Matthew talks in the third person. He says Jesus walked up to Matthew sitting at the tax booth and said, come with me. And Matthew got up and followed him, right? If Matthew's writing Matthew, why would he say Jesus said to Matthew, follow me? Why wouldn't he say instead, Jesus said to me, follow me, and I got up and followed him?
I mean, then how would we know who he told that to?
Well, yeah. So like in the book of Matthew, if Matthew's writing the book of Matthew, right? That scene is supposed to be Jesus recruiting the tax collector, and if the tax collector is Matthew, why would Matthew say, Jesus said to Matthew, get up and follow me, and Matthew got up and followed him. If Matthew was truly writing Matthew could have just said, Jesus said to me, get up and follow him, and I got up and followed him. And that would be like Matthew claiming, hey, I'm writing this, and I got up when Jesus told me to follow him.
Is any part of the Bible written in the first person?
I'm pretty sure. Like we could probably look at the Pentateuch.
I don't think that other than Jesus, the word "I" is used in anybody describing what's going on in the Bible.
Is any book in the Bible written in first person? Yes, several books in the Bible are written in first person. I, me, we, my, particularly within prophecy, wisdom, literature, and Pauline epistles. Notable examples include Revelation is written in the first person by John, and then Nehemiah is written in the first person. Ecclesiastes is written in the first person, and parts of Jeremiah is written in the first person. Parts of Ezekiel is written in the first person, and parts of Daniel is written in the first person. Revelation, John says I, and Nehemiah, it uses I. Ecclesiastes, the narrator identifies himself as the preacher, the son of David, king of Jerusalem. There are plenty of books in the Bible that are written in first person, but for some reason...
Are those all at the very end?
Revelation's at the very end, but, some of these are Old Testament books, I'm pretty sure. Ecclesiastes? That's Old Testament, I think. But
you said Ephesians? You said, or what?
Ecclesiastes is...
Ecclesiastes. 8:10.
Is Ecclesiastes?
Who is Ecclesiastes?
Ecclesiastes is a book. It's an epistle in the New Testament.
It's New Testament. Shit. Okay, that's all.
But like when he's referring to I in Ecclesiastes, like who is that?
That would be Paul.
The narrator identifies himself as the preacher, the son of David, the king of Jerusalem. So, let me see.
So wait, who would that be?
I thought Ecclesiastes was Old Testament, actually.
That is Old.
I think is. Let me
that is Old Testament, but it's just like, is that a person, or you're saying that he's writing an I? But like, who is that?
So
Okay, so
it
Ecclesiastes
started. Oh, oh.
Ecclesiastes 7:29, it reads, "This only have I found. God created mankind upright, but they have gone in search of many schemes."
So who is Ecclesiastes?
I can find it.
Ecclesiastes isn't a person.
Yeah, it's like the name of the book, but somebody else wrote Ecclesiastes.
Who wrote Ecclesiastes?
Paul, I believe.
No,
Me
Paul
double
didn't write
check.
it.
No,
The
King
words of
Solomon.
the preacher, the
I
son of
forget,
David,
but
king
I don't
of
think it's in the New
Jerusalem.
Testament.
No, it's
Is Ecclesiastes the weird one?
No, it's King Solomon. Ecclesiastes is attributed to King Solomon, son of David, who reigned in Jerusalem according to Bible study tools.
So okay, so it's only King Solomon
But
that
I
wrote.
mean, like you were asking me, like, does anyone write in the first person? And like, sure, there are plenty of people who write in the first person. So why does Matthew not write in the first person if Matthew wrote Matthew? Like when Matthew
When you say plenty, did you? That's 2 or 3.
I listed like 8 almost. Revelation, Nehemiah, Ecclesiastes, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, Amos, the epistles, Acts of the Apostles, Psalms. There are plenty of books that use like I or me or we or my, and they're writing in some sort of like first person tense. But again, like Matthew, right? If Matthew wrote Matthew when he's
So wait,
writing in that segment,
who wrote Psalms?
well, okay, I could look that up
So
too.
no, because it's starting to look that like every one that says I, the book is not named after them.
No, like, well, why does that matter? Right?
Psalms is written by David.
Yeah. So let's say that all those books that are writing in the first person, it's not named after them, right? Okay, but like in the literature, they are identifying that they wrote the books, right? But Matthew, there's a specific claim attached to Matthew saying like Matthew wrote Matthew. And when Matthew is describing Jesus recruiting the tax collector, he talks about Matthew in the third person rather than just saying I, like, hey, Jesus spoke to me, told me to get up from the tax booth, and then I got up and I followed Jesus. And so, like, why would he write in the third person if it's his autobiography and his first-hand account? Why not identify himself in the literature?
Because it's God's words.
I mean, like, that's just appealing to ignorance. That's just saying, like, God's ways are higher than our ways, so maybe God, like, isn't God not the God of confusion? Why would he do something that would confuse us about who the writer is?
It's not confusion. It's speaking.
Can I say something? Can I say something to that? I'm pretty sure nobody at that time spoke in the first person.
No, wait, that's not the case. I mean, like, I have a list of people according to, darn it, I can't find him again.
I'm pretty sure Tacitus also didn't speak in the first person. That's just how Romans spoke.
Well, no, Tacitus in Agricola identifies himself in the literature.
Yeah, that's in every single text that he wrote.
Not in every single text, but at least one specific text. Yeah, he identifies
at
himself.
least one specific text.
Theosophical wondering. Yo, dude, I'm gonna debate somebody on the Gospels, but if you help them, I might lose. But like, I'm taking the challenge. So, like, I'm studying the fuck out of these Gospels.
Yeah, it's all good, man. I'm driving. I hope I'm not too noisy.
No, you're good.
Okay. Yeah, I heard some of what you were saying. So, yeah, like I said in that video, it's not uncommon for ancient authors to not name themselves in their writing.
I would actually disagree with you. So, like, there's this guy I'm looking into named Camille Gregor, and he was helping on this YouTube video, I think by the Paul whatever, like this YouTube video called Paulology or something. I don't know. Wait, hold
Apologia.
on. Yeah, Apologia. Basically he talks about how like there are plenty of writers who are writing Greco-Roman autobiographies and first-hand accounts who like identify themselves. There's like a whole list, including
I'm not saying nobody does. I'm saying there's also quite a bit who don't. Like Plutarch never names himself.
Julius Caesar.
As far as I know. Yeah, as far as I know, Tacitus does not say I Tacitus wrote this. And but they, like Plutarch does speak in the first person, but then you have like Xenophon, he does third person reporting.
Wait.
So it's
Oh, go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say, so I'm not saying nobody does, but I'm saying like a lot of times they don't either. So
But
it's not like a decisive like knock, as far as I know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but all those people who are like not identifying themselves, are they like in antiquity, and are they Greco-Roman autobiographies?
Plutarch and Tacitus, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, but I mean, for Tacitus, I do have something of him like identifying himself in Agricola. But I get I can look into what you're saying. Which ones are like not identifying themselves?
Julius Caesar, Josephus.
But like, are those antiquity? Julius Caesar. Let's see. Give me one sec. I would do a page split. Julius.
The other thing that's important too, Coco.
Yeah.
Like I said in that video, is if they were anonymous, the church would have flagged that, because they typically flagged books they weren't sure of. Like that's why a lot of books didn't make it into the canon until later, or some books never made it at all because they were never sure who wrote it. So you would expect to see like a bunch of debate occurring in the church. Like if nobody knew who wrote the Gospels, there'd be a lot of debate about where they came from, because they do that with other books.
Well, yeah. So I would make the claim that they are internally anonymous. Like the authors in the literature don't like identify themselves, and like I was saying earlier, Matthew had like an opportunity to identify himself when he was talking about Jesus recruiting the tax collector. Like he says that Jesus walked up to the tax booth, he saw Matthew sitting at the tax booth, and he said, "Get up and follow me," and Matthew got up and followed Jesus, right? If Matthew was writing Matthew, why didn't he write it in first person and say like, Jesus told me to get up from the tax booth and I got up and followed Jesus? Right, that's a like ample opportunity for like Matthew to identify himself in the text, but Matthew doesn't identify himself. Rather, he talks in the third person.
Well, can I ask you?
And then you have
Doesn't that consider other?
You have like Xenophon doing similar things. He's another writer from antiquity. He writes in the third person as well.
Yeah, but he's writing
so I don't think it's decisive. And the other point too is like, again, if nobody knew who wrote them, the church would be debating it, because you see them debate other anonymous writings. Like Hebrews is like the case study that you see them debating. They're not sure who wrote it. And that's why
Xenophon is writing under as a pseudonym, so I don't know why. It would be obvious why he wouldn't speak in first person. He's writing under a different name. He's pretending to be someone else in the text, so it's obvious why he wouldn't speak in first person. What's surprising with the gospel accounts is that if their eyewitnesses are based on eyewitness testimony, even if we wouldn't necessarily expect them to directly identify who they are, we would expect it to be indicated somewhere in the text, as are pretty much every other work we have in ancient literature. When there's an eyewitness account, it's indicated somewhere in the text, either by speaking in first person or indicating themselves directly by name.
That's not true.
Right. Well, then I guess
Pretty much
what I
every-
would
yeah,
say
it's-
is
There's very few examples.
hold on a
you can come
second.
up with
I got to
for the
mute. I'm
alternative.
driving. Hold on.
No, you're good.
There's very few examples you can come up with the alternative. You guys brought up there's only really two examples I'm aware of. It's going to be Julius Caesar and it's going to be Xenophon. Now Xenophon is writing under a pseudonym, so it's obvious why he wouldn't directly speak in first person, because he's pretending to be someone else in the text. And the only example you can bring up is Julius Caesar. But Julius Caesar, everyone knew that Julius Caesar was writing that when it was published, so there's no reason for him to speak that way. All the other examples we have, when there's some kind of eyewitness to an event, they indicate that somewhere in the text, at least all the examples I'm aware of.
Right. So if they are truly anonymous and nobody knows who wrote them, why don't you see a ton of debate about it?
Right?
And I know you mentioned the Alogi and also Marcion, but when you look at the Alogi, like a lot of their issues were theological. It wasn't like it's sort of like saying, hey, there's debate about evolution, and I cite Ken Ham, and I'm like, well, not really in the scientific community.
Well,
So we would. Do you see what I'm saying?
let's ask a couple things here. The people that debate the author of Hebrews and debate the author of Revelation, are those people also arguing those books should not be considered scripture?
No, they're just bracketing that it's unclear like who the author is.
Yeah,
but you don't really see that in the Gospels.
Those people that bring that up also don't think those books should be considered scripture, right? So there's not really anyone in the proto-Orthodox movement, if we want to call it that look at these Gospels and think they shouldn't be scripture. So why the hell would they debate the authorship?
Well, like, my issue here is, look, you have Mark and Luke as well, and if the church was just this group of people that wanted to just slap disciples' names on them, why wouldn't they have named disciples in regards
Oh, that's easy to answer. For one, we have a pretty good idea where the idea that Mark wrote a gospel came from. It comes from Papias, so there's already a tradition about this guy Mark composing a gospel. But there's issues with Papias' account in which we should probably determine that he's not talking about the gospel that made it into the New Testament. So what it seems to be going on here is that we have church fathers in the late 2nd century and on reading this account from Papias and assuming he's talking about the gospel that they're looking at, or either deceitfully adding that name to the gospel. I think it's more likely they're just mistaken. But either way, there's a tradition that Mark composed the gospel, and that's where the idea came from, right? So now they're attaching that tradition to a gospel in front of them. Now, as for Mark not being someone important, I strongly disagree. I mean, Mark was essentially, when we look at what is said about Mark's gospel, it's supposed to be Peter's gospel. This is supposed to be from Peter's testimony. The reason why they don't say Gospel of Peter or call it Gospel of Peter is because there's already a book circulating that claimed to be from Peter, so they wouldn't name it that. And it's also interesting, why is it called the Gospel of Mark if it's supposed to be Peter's interpreter? It should actually be the Gospel of Peter. Yeah, so it's not like they're saying this came from some random person. They're saying it came from someone. They're saying this is Peter's testimony.
Well, no,
Sir, let me. Can I ask you a question real quick? Was the point you were making that the only way there would be debate on the Gospels is if they were deciding whether these books were scripture or not?
Well, I'm saying when we look at the kind of like when people bring up, like when Eusebius brings up that he didn't think Revelation was written by John, son of Zebedee. He's bringing that up to challenge whether or not it should be considered scripture. All right, the same kind of thing we see happens with like 2 Peter and Hebrews. It's people bringing it up when they're challenging whether or not it should be considered authoritative. So I'm not aware of anyone doing that with the Gospels, but I'm also not aware of anyone challenging, at least in the proto-Orthodox movement, whether or not those books should be considered authoritative.
Right. So wouldn't we expect if they were truly anonymous that would call into question whether they should be included in the same way that these other books were?
No.
Why not?
So. Why would we expect
if you don't know who the author is, wouldn't that kind of bring in it could have been someone who's a non-apostle. It could have been a Gnostic. If nobody knew, it seems like there would definitely be debate about it, but you don't see that.
Well, no, yeah, but I just told you why we wouldn't really expect a debate. They considered the books authoritative.
How would they consider them authoritative if they didn't know who wrote them?
Well, because they're early stories about Jesus.
Yeah, the earliest.
Yeah, but I mean, when you look at like books like Lee McDonald, when he writes about the canon, the formation of the canon, one of the main criteria was apostolicity. Like they have to determine that these books were not written by like second or third hand people. Like these.
And how
these
did they
people,
determine that?
Through tradition, through like I mean, you got to know where they come
tradition that
from.
they got wrong. Obviously, I just brought up Papias.
Yeah, but I'm
Where's the
saying that
tradition coming from?
if nobody knew who wrote them, how do you know they're authoritative? That could have been a Gnostic who wrote them. Seems like I definitely call it into question.
Well, the idea that there came from apostles, right? These apostles was an idea that evolved, right? So initially, when we see people quoting them, they don't call them Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They refer to them by, like Justin Martyr calls them members of the apostles. Ignatius, when he alludes to them, calls it the gospel of Jesus Christ. Right? There's these different names they're referred to. We don't start getting the name Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John until the end of the 2nd century.
All right.
Yeah, I mean that seems incidental because there's obviously a tradition that predates that. It's not like
Yeah, from Papias.
Irenaeus or Papias just made it up right on the fly.
No,
This is
Papias
something
didn't.
they received. You know what I
How do you
mean?
know Papias isn't talking about different books?
Do you think that they just like declared this by fiat? They didn't receive this from anybody. There's nothing that predated them.
Well, Papias tells us where he got his information from. But how do you? But the question was, how do you know Papias isn't talking about different books?
I'm not sure. That's something I still have to look in. But what I'm trying to suggest is that these guys, it's more likely that they received this from people prior to them. And I think
No.
if Hebrews or Second Peter were called into question as far as scripture goes, it had to do with like nobody was sure who wrote them. And I think that same debate would apply here for the Gospels. If nobody knew who wrote them, it seems like there'd be all kinds of debate around them.
I
They
don't
wouldn't just
think.
take it at face value.
All right. Well, that's not. But again, the debate about Second Peter and Hebrews arose from whether or not the people liked what was in the book, not necessarily whether or not they had any reason to know who wrote them. I mean, honestly, I don't really think they have good reason to know who wrote any of these.
Sir, if you admit that the church appealed to earlier tradition in regards to Mark, why wouldn't you grant the same thing in regards to the other gospels?
Well, they do with Mark and Matthew, right? They bring up where the tradition comes from. So with Mark and Matthew, it's coming from this guy Papias, and Papias is very obviously not talking about the books that are in the New Testament. Like if we just look at what Papias says about Matthew, he says Matthew was composed in Hebrew. That cannot be the Gospel of Matthew.
Wait, Steelman, what'd you say? Were you asking like what era?
I was asking whether or not, well, not whether or not, rather, what era in time did Papias speak about Jesus?
Well, Papias is thought to be early 2nd century. That's kind of the
Okay.
mainstream view.
From my understanding, the Gospels were written from the 1st century, from, I believe, 50 AD, before that, could have been before that, and then 95 AD. But afterward,
Yeah, it's interesting you guys bring up date ranges like this, right? It's like you guys are charitable to the early date, but not the later date, right? Because
sure, but it's all interpretations. Because if it was Jesus'
well,
word itself,
the mainstream range is like 70 to like 100, right? But
okay.
the actual range among, if we look at all the scholars, is going to be like 50 AD to like 150 AD.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, so but okay, if we're looking at what gospels are written when, right? I mean, I think the only ones we can have a pretty good place to put in the 1st century is going to be Matthew and Mark. Okay. Now, when Papias is writing, I think there's a lot of indications he gives that he doesn't have access to Matthew. Okay. One indication is again that he says Matthew was composed in Hebrew. Okay, which isn't the case because we know Matthew's using Greek source text. He's using the Gospel of Mark in the Greek Septuagint, which doesn't make sense if he's writing in Hebrew. You can't copy Greek source text and write in Hebrew. Otherwise, you wouldn't be copying the text. And then secondly, he has a tradition that's preserved about Judas's death that's not found in either Matthew or Luke, which doesn't make sense if he's looking at the Gospel of Matthew.
Okay.
And if he's not talking about whatever book he's talking about that he says Matthew wrote that's in Hebrew is not the Gospel of Matthew. He's talking about something else. And when we look at church fathers, when they're thumbing through the historical record to try to find someone that has some sort of tradition that goes back to the apostles, it's very interesting that the person they find is someone that they're not a big fan of. Because Eusebius calls this guy Papias an idiot, right? What other tradition is there that ties Matthew and Mark to writing Gospels? It's all from Papias.
Well, Papias, you said, spoke in which era? 2nd century, right? So
Early
we wanna
2nd century.
if we want to confirm whether or not something is valid, why don't we just consider, like you're saying, primary source material? Essentially, what you're saying.
But what books is he looking at is the question.
Oh, I don't remember the name of the books. I've read them, but I just remember the name.
No. I'm saying why think Papias is looking at canonical Matthew or canonical Mark? He doesn't give us any indications. Papias has books that he's aware of, right? That he says Matthew wrote one and Mark wrote one. But you guys are assuming, and the church is assuming, he's talking about the books that you guys have. But why assume that? He gives no indication of that, and in fact, he gives us indication of the contrary.
Could you repeat that? Sorry, I missed that last part.
Yeah, so there's this guy, Papias, that says Matthew wrote a gospel and Mark wrote a gospel, right? And I'm asking, why do we assume that he's talking about the Gospel of Matthew and the Gospel of Mark, the ones that made it into the New Testament? Because he doesn't give us any indication those are the two books he's talking about. In fact, the indication he gives us is to the contrary. Given the reasons I've provided here. One, he says Matthew was composed in Hebrew, which we know is not the case. And two, he says that he reports a tradition about Judas's death that's not found in either Matthew or Luke. So I think he's talking about the Gospel of Matthew there. He seems to be talking about some other book. Maybe a book that's lost, or maybe one of the Gnostic Gospels we're aware of.
Would it be like out of the world to like presuppose that he's talking about these books just based upon their names?
No. Why would we think that?
Just because like at straight word value, if we're going to talk about Mark and Matthew, like if there's gospels about Mark and Matthew, why would it not be these two? I know what you just said, because like the Hebrew and
the reasons
like,
I gave
traditions that weren't.
Well, let's think about it. If he's looking at Matthew, do you think he could tell whether or not it's in Hebrew?
Did Papias speak Hebrew?
Well, you can look at a text and know if it's in Greek or not if you're writing in Greek, right?
Did he speak Greek though?
Did he write in Hebrew?
Yeah, he's writing in Greek. Obviously,
then yeah, he would know if it's Hebrew or Greek.
Yeah. Okay. So he's looking at a text, right? That's in that he says was originally composed in Hebrew. Okay.
The language that Jesus spoke, right? Greek Aramaic. So we have to consider whether or not the canonical books of, as we're talking about, are within, I suppose, within standards of Greek Aramaic.
Well, okay.
Say that again. What's the question?
Not a question, making a statement.
What did you say?
Essentially, what I'm stating is, steam at it. We have to consider whether or not the canonical books are of standard, or rather, can be interpreted best from Greek Aramaic to whatever language we're speaking now, or whatever books were written in that language must be considered if it's of standard.
Well, we know. Okay, so we know that Matthew's using Mark as a source. That's one thing we know. He's copying Mark, in some cases word for word. Okay.
Okay.
He can't do that if he's writing in Hebrew. He just can't. You can't copy a Greek text word for word in Hebrew and then have it somehow translated back to word for word in Greek. That's not how language works. If you translate something from Spanish to English, right, and then have someone retranslate it to Spanish, it's not going to be word from the original Spanish translation. That's just not how language works.
Well, perhaps you could utilize a language that's similar to, or more similar to that language, and then interpret there. And then we could utilize a chain of languages that have similar interpretations of that set language, and then we could just interpret it from there.
I don't know what you're talking about. My point is that Matthew.
Okay.
Matthew's. You're not. Does anyone understand what this guy's saying? It's not just me. I doubt anyone understands what you're saying right now. What are you talking about?
I could steel man it for you. Fine.
What issue am I bringing up here? Matthew's using Mark as a source text, right? He's copying Mark, right? Do you understand what I'm saying there?
Yeah, I do understand what you're saying, but I'm just stating we have to consider the linguistic conventions, right? We have to use the linguistic convention appropriately. That's all I'm saying.
Mark was written in Greek. Mark was written in Greek, okay? If Matthew's copying Mark in Greek, it can't be in Hebrew. We wouldn't have a word-for-word copy if that's the case.
Okay.
Okay, so whatever book Papias is talking about, he's either confused or it's not the book that we're looking for. Okay?
Yes.
We have other people that claim to have this Hebrew Matthew that say it was translated into Greek. But Greek Matthew is not a translation from Hebrew. It's copying Greek text. It's using Greek text, so it's not a translation. So whatever book the church is just confused about this whole issue. The early church is confused about what they're looking at.
Wait, can I investigate this further? Because now you're saying that they're using Greek text. What exact text are they using?
Matthew, I told you
Luke
this.
copy Mark.
Matthew and Luke are using Mark, and Matthew's also using the Greek Septuagint.
It has to do with it has to do with the synoptic problem.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. I have no arguments. I have nothing to state anything. I just agree and follow along. Anything. I just agree and follow along.
Okay, so like if you have this guy, right, that's talking about these books that were composed by apostles, right, and says one book was composed by Matthew, one book was composed by Mark. Okay, that doesn't mean that the books he's talking about are the books you're looking at just because someone else is claiming the books you have are composed by Matthew and Mark. What makes more sense here is that the church in the late 2nd century is trying to find apostles to attach to the books they're looking at, right? And this is the best tradition they can find is from this guy. That's what makes more sense to me.
Holy shit, that scared me. I just had an alarm go off and it scared the shit out of me.
Hey, sir, let me ask you a question. Did was the church worried about false gospels and pseudographical writings?
Yeah, and they were also unsuccessful in filtering those out because although they say that's their concern, I think they're more motivated by finding books that agree with them theologically.
Also, like, really quick, Irenaeus, he's writing a work called Against the Heresies. He's basically saying, like, all the other people who are claiming that, like, they got books from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are heretical, and he has it right. And he's naming Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John in his writings.
Well, my point is like if the church was worried about this, it seems like that would even raise the probability there'd be a lot of debate surrounding the Gospels if nobody knew who wrote them.
Not if it agrees with them theologically. Why would they bother?
Well, Hebrews, I think Hebrews, if I recollect, the reason Hebrews was included is because it was Orthodox, but they weren't sure if they weren't sure of the authorship if an apostle wrote it. And like Lee Martin McDonald in his book on the canon, that was like one of their primary criteria. So they had to make sure it was like apostolic. So this would just like raise the probability, like if nobody knew where the Gospels came from, there would be tons of debate, but there isn't. And you'd also see a lot of copies of anonymous versions, but you don't see that either. So this is like pretty strong counter evidence against the idea that they're anonymous.
Well, we've already kind of hashed out the first point several times here. What's the second point you brought up?
The second point is that oh geez, sorry.
We would see anonymous copies. What does that mean?
If nobody knew who wrote them or where they came from, you would see the same kind of debate surrounding them that you see with Hebrews.
Yeah, but
Peter.
I've already given you my response to that. What was the second point?
What was your response? Why wouldn't we expect that?
Because the debate about Hebrews, 2 Peter, and what was the other book? Hebrews, 2 Peter, and Revelation have to do with the theological disagreements, right? The people have theological things they disagree with in the book, and then they say,
it had nothing to do with authorship at all. Like that never came into question.
How would they know who wrote these things?
That's the point. If they didn't know, then that's why they were put on hold as far as being included. I think Hebrews, as far as I know, you're saying Hebrews was only questioned because of its orthodoxy. See, I would disagree with that. I think it was included because of its orthodoxy, but it was put on hold because of its authorship. They weren't sure who wrote it.
I don't know specifically about Hebrews, but I know with Revelation, a lot of the debate was whether or not they should agree with these books theologically. Okay, so they would use that as kind of a jumping off point to argue against authorship, that it didn't come from John the Apostle, John son of Zebedee. Right, but the debate stemmed from the theological disagreements, which also is what we see with 2 Peter, and I imagine is what we're going to see, what I would see with Hebrews if I looked into it.
So the claim here is that the only reason news books were put on hold is because of their orthodoxy, not their authorship.
That there was theological things that there was a tension with the church. Yeah, that those theological reasons,
But not their authorship.
that they used the authorship as the argument, but the underpinning to all that was the theological disagreement.
Okay. Well, I think I would disagree. I don't have anything on hand, but Lee Martin McDonald doesn't say that. He says it was due to their authorship.
But I
And
want
the
to
reason like a book like Hebrews was included was because it was orthodox. Like its teaching was orthodox. And you also have things like the Didache, which was orthodox, but it wasn't included in scripture because it wasn't written by apostles. It was written by like second generation people, which kind of ties to my point. One of the key criteria for a book's inclusion was it had to be apostolic. And so you would think if the Gospels, nobody knew who wrote them, nobody knew if an apostle wrote them, there'd be all kinds of debate surrounding it, but you don't see that. But hey, I got to roll. You can have the last word, brother.
But what was the second point? I'm trying to get to the second point you brought up. You said something about we'd expect anonymous copies. I don't know what you mean by that.
Hold on a second. What I mean is that with Hebrews, you have anonymous copies of it. You see, you see that in the manuscript evidence.
Hebrews is anonymous.
But you don't see that with the Gospels. You don't see any anonymous copies. They're all attributed in the manuscript evidence.
For one, let's point out. Let's first establish Hebrews is anonymous. It doesn't say Paul's not addressed to the letter anywhere. Okay. So the text itself is anonymous. Now, as for the Gospels, so the title that's attached to all the manuscripts is according to Matthew, according to Mark, according to Luke, according to John, etc. Those are the titles that are attached. Those are not titles that they all four would have came up with on their own originally, right? So those titles were clearly added later. They weren't original. Now, if you're looking for an example of a manuscript that doesn't have the title on it, we actually do have one such example. It's going to be P1. It's an early copy of Matthew that doesn't have Matthew's name at the top of the page. So we actually do have an example of a manuscript that doesn't have the title on it.
Wasn't that just a fragment? And one could argue that when they were attributed, they were included as tags on the papyrus. Like you could easily just say, hey, the tag just fell off or something. Because that's just a fragment, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it is a fragment, right? And the top is torn, but the issue is that we see where the page number is, and the title would have been above the page, or the title would have been before the page number. So the fact that the page number is listed there shows that there's nothing above the page number. So even though it's ripped at the top, there's nowhere for the title to be.
All right, I'll have to look into that. I think it was Was it P51?
P1.
P1. All right, I got to roll, guys. Thanks for the combo.
Oh, hell yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Oh, good God. I have like so much to study. Fuck.
Who are you debating on this, Coco?
I was who am I debating? Like in the event that's coming up?
I thought you said you were debating someone on the Gospels.
Yeah, it's a guy named Marcus.
No, see, I'm better. P1 does. People don't listen to me. P1 has the page number. The page number is going to be before they start copying the text. So there's no room for there to be a title there, even if we don't have even if we have part of the top ripped, right? There's still going to be no title there.
May I interject?
Go for it.
Coco.
What's up?
I want to debate.
Who? Oh, wait. Oh, you already told me. Yeah, I have to set that up. I am setting up debates for the next debate event.
For sure. I actually did converse with Divine Order, and he's willing to debate, but I'm willing to debate Christianity, and I'm going to have my empirics in order. Don't worry. It's not like last time where I fucking debated you in downtown Toronto, and I just didn't have much. So I'll have my empirics in order and make sure everything will be perfectly, just perfect. Make sure everything's perfect. And
I think Divine Order's a Christian, though, isn't he?
He's a Christian, but I am also a deist, so we can debate about deism in the fullest of the extent, and try to make it make it a spectacle.
Okay. Yeah, we'll see what we can
also,
do.
Also, can we debate Ian? Can we debate Parker?
I mean, those people are like harder to book. They're like really busy,
Yeah.
and like
Yeah, I don't think Parker and Ian are going to come in here to debate you. I mean, they're probably only going to debate someone with a bigger platform.
Hold on. I know
Or
you're talking big, but,
I'd have to
let me
pay
talk a
them.
little bit bigger. No, I'll pay them, brother. I have money.
But no, yeah, I'm debating a guy named Marcus, and then yeah, I'm taking everything I already know about the Gospels and just expanding on it. But
what's the topic of the debate?
The Gospels are not historically reliable.
Ah, good one.
Well, what? So you're going to bring up authorship. It sounds like. What else do you plan on?
Authorship, and then also how like early Gospels leave out whole events, and like they don't even like talk about it. So it seems as if like the story of Jesus is being added to, and it's becoming more miraculous, and like we can't really verify firsthand accounts of like certain events. And then also like yeah, I'm gonna talk about how like Matthew, or well, I did some research, and like all the Gospels are technically like Greco-Roman first-hand accounts or like autobiographies, and how like it's normal for like Greco-Roman autobiographies or like first-hand accounts in antiquity to like identify themselves as the authors. And yeah, I have to find like the sections in which like they identify themselves, which like I can't really find, but I'm trying to
find the sections. What now? Where?
So like you know that picture that I sent you?
Yeah, that has all the references right there. You can look up each paragraph and chapter right there.
Yeah. So I need to find them in the text. Like yeah,
But I tell you what, here's one thing maybe you could try to explore if you're trying to bring up the kind of like train you're going on there. If you want to argue, one way you could present your case is to say that historically, recording the events historically is not the main concern of the authors. The main concern of the authors is to present their theological cases, which is kind of what you're saying there. And things you can point to for that, you can look at the changes made in the synoptic tradition when Matthew and Luke are utilizing Mark as a source. And one great example you can point to is where the post-resurrection appearances took place. Okay? Because if we look at Mark and Matthew, they indicate that Jesus is going to appear to the disciples in Galilee, right? So what happens in Matthew and Mark is that the woman discovered the empty tomb and they want to run away afraid, and they're instructed to tell the disciples to meet Jesus in Galilee, okay? And then Mark, of course, doesn't have any post-resurrection appearances, but Matthew only has one in Galilee. So the appearances to the disciples begin in Galilee in both Mark and Matthew is what's indicated. But then in Luke, there is no return to Galilee. All the post-resurrection appearances happen in Jerusalem, right? So if Luke is coming later, why does Luke all of a sudden resituate where the appearances take place? That's not someone that's concerned with recording history.
Yeah, and yeah, like I was I was gonna include that too, like the appearances and like why. Yeah, I have that in my notes as well. I was gonna include that too. And so
you can also point to examples where like Acts and Luke, whoever the authors are there, utilize historical events incorrectly and like re-put them in the wrong timeline. Like one example is the census of Quirinius, how it doesn't align with the birth of Jesus in Matthew. Another example is I would type this down. Type down the 3 Jewish revolt leaders in Acts. Okay, type that down. Okay. Because there's these 3 Jewish revolt leaders that Luke brings up, and he gets the dates wrong on when these revolts occurred. And we know this from reading Josephus. Luke puts one of the revolts in the 50s that actually took place in the first decade of the first century. So that's like one thing you can look at. They get historical events wrong.
Puts revolts in the 50s, and then okay, so three Jewish revolt leaders in Acts.
Yep. Just write down timeline issue 3 Jewish revolt leaders in Acts and look into that, and you'll find a whole bunch of stuff about it.
Okay.
And then, do you want to bring up geography issues too? Because I have a really good geography issue.
Hell yeah! I'll bring up like all the issues. I'll try to make the debate like a long debate. I want to like sit down and like go through a lot with him.
Okay, it's gonna be Mark 7. I think it's like 31. That I might have that verse wrong, but Jesus, Mark reports this this itinerary travel where they go. Man, I'm looking for. Let me look it up real quick. Just 1 second. I'm gonna mess it up before I try to explain it.
Oh. Oh, and actually, Shay, I have not heard of that thing that you're talking about. Davidic. Oh wait, actually, I have. Jesus being like Jesus being
divinity.
or yeah, like Jesus being of the lineage of David. Yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah, I've heard people debate that. Also, what's up, Steelman? I hope you're doing okay. Are you going on a motorcycle ride?
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
No, yeah.
I'll turn off the audio if it's too loud.
Very good.
Okay, in Mark 7:31, it says they go from Tyre to the Sea of Galilee, via Sidon. Okay. Now, Steel, you got a lot of background noise. Can you mute?
Sorry, bro.
It says they go from Tyre to the Sea of Galilee via Sidon. Okay, that's Mark 7:31.
Yeah.
Now, if we look at a map, Sidon is north of the Sea of Galilee, and Tyre is in between the two. So it doesn't make sense geographically, sorry, for them to travel that far north to go south. It would be like saying, I'm going to go, you know where Iowa's at compared to you, right?
Yeah.
It'd be like saying, I'm in Iowa, and I'm going to go to Texas via Canada. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
You wouldn't go through Canada to get to Texas from Iowa.
Yeah, like you're going past it to get to Canada.
You're going north to go south. It doesn't make any sense what's being said there.
Yeah.
It seems to be someone that doesn't know the geography very well.
Okay, so say that Mark reports they go from Tyre to the city of Galilee.
They go from Tyre to the Sea of Galilee via Sidon.
Is it possible that it's not properly interpreted?
But wait, so Sidon is north of Galilee, or the
Sidon is north of Tyre in Galilee, and Galilee is south of Tyre. Yeah.
Can someone give me cookies? I like cookies.
Okay.
Just 2 cookies. Oh no, I'm gonna get kicked. I'm just kidding. The mods. Hopefully not too much noise.
Like, we're 3,000 years past this book at this point. Why the fuck are we still talking about this shit? You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, it's valid for, like, philosophical quandaries if you're going to talk about, like, what the meaning of life is. But, like, are we really still debating, like, the historical accuracy of the Bible when we have just mountains of evidence?
Yeah, we still have to crush the Christians. Okay, we have to take away their
there's
hope.
a lot of schizos out there. Lots of schizos.
No, I'm kidding.
No, I believe in you. Coco, you're right. Let's crush the Christians.
We have to crush their hope. They disrespect us. We need to regain the honor of atheism.
Oh, I mean, I was an atheist for a while, to be fair.
But no, I'm totally kidding. Also, dude, Prince, like, congratulations on the dub. Like, the other day I lost like 2 debates, but like I'm gonna get better. But like I took it on the chin. I was like, damn, okay, like I'm gonna lock in. But I don't know.
You debated Prince?
Yeah.
On what?
Prince?
Divine hiddenness. But like the debate should have gone longer. There was a point that I was trying to make, but like it's all good. I took that L. But I think it was pretty close though. But
We'll have.
but I'm still distracted though. Like I say I'm gonna lock in, but I'm still scrolling on TikTok. But I mean, like I am taking notes and like reading, but I'm still just like lazy as fuck. I'm like scrolling on TikTok. But should I still should I stay live? Should I wait for other people or?
I mean, if anyone wants to stay up and debate, it's no problem, right? We could even debate geology or even geography.
Shoot.
We can talk about where certain metals come from and debate that.
I'm not sure about
Unless
that.
it's a different live.
But okay, so but yeah,
I'll hop back on a different phone. My phone's gonna die.
Okay.
Humans actually come from space. You can't prove me wrong.
Humans are aliens. Can't prove me wrong.
You know, I have a whole conspiracy about that too. If you want to hear it.
Maybe later.
No problem.
Let's see.
It's fucking rain, man.
Oh shoot. But yeah, I guess you know, whenever I go, oh shoot, someone's in my. Okay, Prince Nappy. But yeah, all I'm gonna do today is take notes and organize for the debate. Yeah, Prince Nappy. Oh shit. Well, okay. Sorry, Prince Nappy, but like.
Let me debate this guy.
I do have to debate you on the resurrection, but like this other guy challenge. Well, remember that guy Marcus? You know the debate I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking, and I was like, okay, let me formally debate Marcus, but like you've been asking to debate me on the resurrection, and like I should have.
No, I'll wait. I'm actually interested in seeing what you do this time. Have you been because I saw Sir up here. Did you ask Sir about the claims that he made?
Yeah. About Marcus's claims?
Yeah.
No. I have to still even look at that footage and go back through it. But a lot of what he was saying was like Old Testament. We're gonna like focus on like the Gospels. He was saying a lot of stuff about archaeology in the Old Testament, and I'm like, okay, that's irrelevant. But
I think he was trying to use that in order to help his arguments though, because I don't know why he dived into the Old Testament.
Yeah, and like
But
I noticed like in his opening statement, he was talking about Old Testament, and then in my opening statement, I said like, okay, I'll grant the Old Testament is like prophetic, but like now we're trying to figure out if like the Gospels fulfill the Old Testament, like whether Jesus actually fulfilled like these things, and I'm saying like the Gospels are not historically accurate.
there's this other claim. I think it was supposed to be some kind of prophecy about the suffering servant. I heard that it's not actually one. I don't know.
Oh, that yeah, and
That
I've
might be
actually
another one.
I've actually had somebody debate on my channel regarding that, and it's on YouTube. But
You might want to look into Mark.
That
Me and Tiffany got
that's
into a whole argument about this. So she was basically claiming that Jesus had fulfilled, I want to say, over 300 prophecies, but I think most of these things were being shot off in Mark. So
oh, what were you gonna say,
the,
Jira?
the suffering servant.
interesting to look at.
The suffering servant is one of the easiest prophecies to point to, because not only is it pretty clear about a particular individual unaliving for the sins of Israel and the people, but even Jews, even the Jews understood this to be a prophecy about Messiah ibn Yusuf, and you could look into their own sources, because this is not a Christian idea. This was a Jewish idea that this was about the Messiah.
Somebody's windy.
Oh, it's Jira. I think he's walking home or something.
But like I said, I don't know. You can look into it, but
Yeah, bro. What if I quote you like the earliest Jewish sources when they referred to Isaiah 53, and they literally talk about the Messiah being unalive. Like, I can show it to you, bro.
To
I'm not.
are you into that, Nappy? Are you willing to look into that with them?
Yeah, you can give it to me. You can send it to me.
I mean, I could read it to you right now. Hold on, let me pull it up.
Yeah.
So, so, if you read Targum Jonathan, this is like the Aramaic Targums that the Jews were like. It's like a Targum is like a translation slash interpretation of the Bible, and when they refer to the servant in Isaiah, they said, "Behold, my servant, the Messiah, he shall prosper." Right, so he already sets the tone that Isaiah is talking about the Messiah, right? And then when you go to the Babylonian Talmud, it says the Messiah is called the leper scholar, right? For surely he has borne our griefs, right? So he's talking about how he's going to be afflicted and whatnot. And then I forgot there's another one. Oh yeah. And the Messiah, I don't know if you guys know about Messiah ben Joseph, the tradition, but the Jews believe that there was going to be two Messiahs. Like, you know how Christians say that the Messiah is going to come twice, like Jesus, he came once and then he's going to come twice in the end. The Jews had idea that there were going to be two Messiahs. There was going to be a suffering servant Messiah, which would be Messiah ben Joseph. And then there's going to be the Messiah that's the kingly priest who's going to reign and bring Israel all together and whatnot. That's going to be Messiah ben David. So when they looked at Messiah ben Joseph, this is a quote from Sukkah 52a. He says, "This speaks of the mourning over the slain, the one who was unalive, Messiah ben Joseph," right? And then he also refers to Zechariah 12:10 when talking about they will look upon me, the one whom they have pierced. And he referred to Messiah ben Joseph fulfilling this prophecy. So just, I mean, you should look into that. I know it's a lot of people who make arguments on TikTok, but just look into the Jewish sources and you'll see how it's consistent with Christian interpretations.
Why do you believe that the Gospels are an accurate account of historical events?
You said what?
I said, why do you believe the Gospels are an accurate account of historical events?
Well,
Hey,
Well, it's
Coco.
pretty accurate in
Oh.
the crucifixion, I would say. And
Wait,
if
Fruit,
J-Rob is
Fruit,
alluding to the crucifixion here,
Fruit, before you take off. Hey, Coco, do you remember that conversation with Sheen and Bell?
Yeah, the live I sent you the other day,
That's the one that you sent me?
or
I thought the one that you sent me was Marcus.
oh
Yeah, it
no,
was.
no. Oh, and are you talking about like? Or wait, what are you talking
The
about?
one with Sheen, Marcus, and no, not Sheen. Sheen and Bell. I think they was discussing God and morality.
I do
I
not
think the
remember.
conversation had like. I think the conversation took place maybe on Wednesday, Thursday.
Yeah, was it when I shared the live with you on TikTok?
I'm pretty sure it was. I think it was the first time he's come on your live in a while.
Oh, okay.
You have that video?
Oh wait, was it on my live?
Yeah,
Oh, I could check. Yeah, I probably have it.
I hope so. That was a really good one.
Okay. But
Proof, you can go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I mean, I think what J-Rob was gonna say is that if this is talking about the Messiah and he is like gonna be tortured or something. I mean, we can say that Jesus was tortured and he is the supposed Messiah. So I think that's the point he was trying to make.
I should probably start making promo material for my debate. But okay, no, I'm not gonna fuck this up. Like, I'm literally going to like do very well in this debate. Like, I'm gonna fucking win this debate.
Coco, you got it. You're locked.
Bro,
My
like I'm not gonna.
observation.
Cause like okay, cause like I gotta redeem myself. Like I don't like to lose.
You
I've
didn't
lost
do
a
bad. Wait, did you lose that one?
which one? Oh,
The one that you recently had with him. Did they declare you the loser?
Oh no, I won via like
Oh,
poll
okay.
and
Because I
also
was saying
guess.
like you didn't do bad, but you didn't do all that great.
Yeah. But when it comes to like my other formal debates, I've been like nervous. Like I did Prom of Evil with Brody and like I lost. And then like Russell, like I've won more times than I've lost. Well, okay. I won by judges vote. Then Russell won judges vote, and I won audience vote. So I don't know. Like I would say, I guess Russell won that one. So I guess like I've won against Russell once. He's won against me once. I think there was another time where I won against him. But no, I'm gonna try to see what I can do here. But okay, like I have a good understanding of like the Gospels, right? So the Gospels are detailing like Jesus's life, and it's gonna be they're detailing Jesus' life. It's gonna be like around like 33 AD, and like I guess I have to look up when Jesus was born, and then the Gospels are dated. I'm getting all like the details, and they're all technically like Greco-Roman literature, and so it's kind of weird that they don't like identify themselves in the text. I got a whole like document, and I'm sort of like writing what my arguments are going to be. So
Are you debating the reliability of the Gospels?
So the topic is the Gospels are not historically reliable.
Yeah, I mean that's a hard one for your opponent to defend, but it's definitely possible. And I've seen scholars like Ehrman lose debates on that topic, actually. Like atheist scholars lose debate on that topic, so.
Interesting.
I think
the thing about, I don't know, I have mixed feelings about Bart because he's not really a debater in my opinion. Like, I feel like it's like a combination of having knowledge and debating skills as well. I feel like he's very knowledgeable, but he's not the type of person to have a debate really. He's more of a dialect or a conversationalist.
Yeah, like they have like a lot of knowledge, but they're not like they might not be debaters.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, like he doesn't have any real debating skills in my opinion. I feel like because he's so knowledgeable, he's good at standing his ground, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
And who are you going against?
A guy named Marcus, which
Gotcha.
I can probably pull him up on the screen. But yeah, I also need to like make promo material, but also like I don't know why the fuck I'm taking on debates right now because I have a long list of shit that I need to do, but for some reason I am. And like okay, so in case nobody understands, whenever you're preparing for like a formal debate, it requires a lot of energy and a lot of study, cause like you have to make
a lot of time.
Yeah, a lot
just
of
in
time.
general.
Yeah, so it's like a stressful thing. It's like a big project. You have to do like your opening statement, then you also have to like cite sources and like blah blah blah, and like prepare.
When is it supposed to happen?
I have it set for July 3rd.
Damn, that's far away.
You got plenty of
Grab
time.
some time.
Which like maybe
I like backed up and stuff.
Maybe I over exaggerated it. Like maybe I should bring it closer.
Definitely.
No, take advantage of it. If you feel like you got a lot of stuff on your hands, take advantage of it.
Use all the time you got.
Yeah, I'm gonna like. Go ahead.
I went over the video that you sent me. In my opinion, it's still the same.
The same thing.
Yeah, I don't have any more to add. Maybe I had something to say and I just forgot it.
Yeah.
But after looking over the video, because I was there, I saw the whole thing. I just can't remember everything when I had that conversation with you. But after looking over the video, my opinion is still the same.
Yeah. Oh yeah, but like, okay, yeah, I don't know, I'm old. Like, there's so much, there's like so much to read, so much to study. Sometimes it's just like hard to
So
get to
much to
anything.
do, so much to see. So what's wrong with taking the back streets?
Yeah.
Take advantage of the people within your circle.
Yeah.
Sir knows a lot about this stuff. He was just here.
Yeah. And then I'm gonna.
You could have literally asked him like, why do like most of them believe that they are, and then start from there, because that's most likely the route. That's the route that he's most likely going to take.
Yeah.
Because he's used to having conversations with these people about it. So you literally have like your key to success right there.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk to him. Joey was just in here. I'm gonna talk to Joey. I'm gonna hit up Joey, and then no, I was thinking about hitting up Theologos. We are friends on TikTok, so be like, hey, will you give me some tips? Why do you think the gospel is? But yeah, no, like but no, I'm supposed to have this to like oh, someone has crinkles, but
It's Prince.
Oh, but the debate's supposed to happen July 3rd. I think like one good thing that I'm doing that I don't normally do. Normally when it comes to debates I like procrastinate. But one good thing I'm doing is like I've started early. I started like right now preparing. So like that's pretty good. Prepare, study. And yeah. Also, I'm looking into arguments on like why Matthew is not Levi. Matthew attempts to like sort of make Levi and Matthew the same person, but like Sir's got a pretty good argument on why Matthew's not Levi, based off of the writing styles of like the Gospels. I'm gonna use that in the.
Yeah, I haven't looked into that too much, Coco, to be honest. But yeah.
How does that help you in your endeavor? Like, how does that disprove the reliability?
Because one of my arguments is going to be that there are details that vary from gospel to gospel. Like, so one thing I'm arguing is that as the gospels get later, they add details or they fudge certain details. So one of them is going to be like Matthew. Like in earlier gospels like Mark, they're going to say like Jesus recruited the tax collector Levi, and it seems as if Matthew writes the same thing, like Jesus walks up and recruits the tax collector, but instead of saying Levi, he says Matthew. And some people try to say that, like, you know, Levi was Matthew's old name, but given the writing styles of certain gospels, Sir makes a good argument that, like, they are not the same person, and that Matthew is trying to fix something that the earlier gospels made a mistake on.
I think also an angle your opponent might go with, if he was smart, is just to say, well, the Gospels have more historically accurate information than not, and so they're generally reliable. Like they're accurate on the major, intermediate, and minor details, and so the facts of the Gospels that aren't accurate don't outweigh all of the things that are.
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't know. But I would say, like, how could he verify the manger story? Because, like, I'm implying that, like, the Gospels are supposed to be autobiographies and first-hand accounts, but if my argument succeeds and, like, if my argument succeeds and, like, the Gospels are anonymous and details are being added, then, like, why should we trust, like, anything about, like, what the Gospels are saying in regards to the manger? I mean, like, the Gospels even get, like, what time period Jesus was born in incorrect.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to say that they got the gist of the story right, which your opponent might argue for, I think that's a smart way your opponent can go. Like, the gist of the story is right. Like, Jesus was actually betrayed by Judas, and he was actually arrested, and he actually had a trial, and he actually had followers, and he was actually like 30 years old, and he, was actually a Jewish teacher and all of this stuff. Like, you could just pile that on and you could keep on going. There's probably like a lot of, like, probably 50 or more details that are accurate potentially. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, that he could go that direction, but yeah, they might be getting the gist of the story right. So yeah.
I have to look into that. Prince.
Yo, Coco.
Yeah.
What's good, gang? I don't have much time. Just wanted to say something really quick.
Yeah.
You ever been to court, gang?
I relatively know what court is like. Yeah.
So you do understand how testimony works?
Yes.
So I have, like, personally, I have been on trial, okay,
Yeah.
for a shooting at a house party. One of my friends got locked up for that shooting. I don't even know if I can say that. Pew pew at a house party.
Yeah.
And when the people gave their testimonies, there's this dude named Shay, this one white girl, and there's this dude named Duck. I beat the hell out of Duck when I was in jail, but that's neither here nor there. Now, all three of their testimonies were describing the exact same event, but each had completely different details, and yet all were accepted as valid testimonies.
Yeah. So like that's normally how it's supposed to be. Let's say three people saw a car accident. You would expect that like details are gonna vary between like what they saw with that car accident, right? That means they're telling the truth. If they all come in and they say the exact same thing, then they planned it. They're saying some kind of lie that they've planned.
Literally.
But if the goal is to give an account of Jesus's life, and details are gonna vary, right? Like what I would expect is they all talk about the same events, but the details vary. But rather.
Wait, what? Wait, Coco.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. Let's take me and you as an example, right?
Yeah.
And Missy, even though Missy not in here, or CF Jewel. I think me and Jewel would consider ourselves like acquaintances of you, Coco.
Yeah.
But if we were to describe the events of your life since I've been here, because I don't know how long Jewel has known you,
Yeah.
I'm almost certain that we would describe certain events. I mean, different events.
Well, yeah, but like but all of them are supposed to be like first-hand accounts of Jesus's life, and like they followed Jesus for like most of his life. So like there are certain things that like one gospel talks about that they don't. So like for example, Matthew talks about how there was an eclipse and like people were raising from the dead, right? And like I mean, you could ask questions about like how did Matthew know this? Maybe he saw the eclipse, but how does he know that people are raising from the dead? But Mark, Luke, and John were probably there for the eclipse and also the people raising from the dead, but they don't write about it. So like what I kind of expect is like if they're telling the truth, I expect all of them to talk about similar events, that they all like witnessed, but different details. But it seems as if earlier gospels are leaving out like whole events that like they're expected to be at. Maybe let's say like at the very most, maybe Mark misses. Maybe Mark like shows up in Jesus's life. Well, actually, wait. Mark is the early gospel, right? So like maybe Mark missed out a couple events on Jesus's life, but I have to look into that. But for the most part, you would expect like okay, maybe a gospel misses one or two events, right? And like they all share like similar events and like vary on detail. Okay, they're telling the truth, but it seems like as if there's a lot of events, right, that are being added that they're missing out on. Like Mark doesn't talk about King Herod unaliving all of the infants, right? But Matthew talks about it. Matthew talks about.
Wait, let's stick on that real quick. Just one example, because I'm not good at. I like to remain linear because I struggle with memory issues because of marijuana. But let's talk about King Herod. Like, why should the others care about those details?
Yeah,
I've been smoking since I was 12, so I struggle with memory things.
Yeah, so Matthew's writing that. So why should they care about those details? Well, I think like the goal of the Gospels is to capture Jesus's life. Matthew is saying that King Herod is unaliving all of the infants to prevent Jesus from being born. Why wouldn't Mark, which is the earliest gospel, also write about that? He's trying to detail Jesus's life, and also again, it's also like how does Matthew even know that King Herod is like unaliving all these infants?
Do these details outweigh all the details that are accurate in the Gospels?
I have to investigate into that.
Yeah.
But also like with that being said, my question would be like, how do we even verify that they're accurate? That's
Yeah,
why
but
we'd
that's
love
your.
to like.
You also have to like. So you're picking out certain things and saying these are inaccurate. I'm curious to know how you would go about saying like Jesus being arrested is inaccurate, or the trial of Jesus is inaccurate, or things like that. Like pointing at specific things that are said about Jesus.
Well,
How are
yeah.
you going to show
So,
that those didn't happen?
well, yeah. So it's like the topic is like, are the Gospels historically reliable? It could be the case that the Gospels get some things right and some things wrong, and there are some things that can't be verified. And
That
I
would be
mean,
historically reliable.
I mean, it depends. It depends, like how many things are they getting right and how many things are they getting wrong.
Yeah, if they're getting the gist of the story right and by far most things right, then yeah, I would just say it's historically reliable at that point.
Yeah.
Bro, what the hell is going on with my internet? What the?
No, it might be lagging out. But
So,
I think if I harp on geographical things that they're getting wrong, if I harp on like they're anonymous works, we can't verify the authors till 2nd century. If I harp on things are being added to the Gospels over time, and
I'm
like
gonna be
the
honest,
list goes
Coco. I
on.
would literally just use consensus if I was debating you. I would just say, yeah, you're just going to be taking this idiosyncratic stance on these historical documents that the scholarly consensus is that they're reliable.
Oh, you would say scholarly consensus. Scholars would say that the Gospels are reliable.
The Gospels are most definitely reliable for the events that they're talking about.
For
Yeah,
many of the
Especially when it
events, according to some secular scholars at least, yeah.
I have to look
but
into
like,
that.
if a story that you're reading, like if we're gonna talk about the 2020 election or whatever, and like we take sides from both and we get personal testimonies, and one side leaves out gigantic details, whose side are we gonna believe?
Yeah. So like
I'm gonna be honest with you. Wait, real quick, Coco. Real quick, gang. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think that that's terrible logic because we can use the Egyptians as an example, right? We don't have a singular story from the Egyptians ever throughout their history of a loss that they took in battle, and yet we know that they've lost battles, right?
Yeah,
The
because we have
Persians
historical
invaded.
context from the outside.
The Persians invaded them with cats tied onto their shield. Now the Persians are the only person who wrote that. How do we know it's true? The Egyptians didn't write about it.
I mean, like, but also like it depends on the claim, right? So like so I mean, the Egyptians losing a battle. I mean, like that's well possible, right? And like that's very well possible in a naturalistic world. But when you have Gospels talking about like all these miraculous miracles that Jesus did and Jesus rose from the dead, okay, this is going to require a significant amount of like evidence, especially like verifiable evidence. And then when you have like anonymous Gospels and Gospels adding stuff and them messing up on like geographical details and messing up on this and messing up on this, and they don't know what time Jesus was born, then like it sort of makes you question, okay, I'm not sure we can trust this in regards to it saying that like Jesus did miraculous things. Maybe like we can trust like Jesus existed and was a preaching Jew during the time, but like not really.
Can you mute up still, man?
Oh yeah, you got background noise.
Can I just provide some insight? I just wanted to share.
Oh yeah.
So the Bible, the New Testament, is resistance literature. So it means you're going to have narrative, you're going to have symbolism, and then you're going to have interpretation. You're thinking about it in courtroom terms. You need to be thinking about it in terms of resistance literature and what it meant in that time. So when you're looking at Matthew, Mark, John, and some of the other books, you need to think about it from the terms of occupation. You need to think about it in terms of their own philosophical categories. Just because the Bible was written in Greek, it doesn't mean that they had a Greek worldview. You need to shift your posture. Your posture, you're thinking about it as in courtroom, but that's not how they wrote the Gospels. They wrote the Gospels in order to maintain their religion while under occupation in a very heavy philosophical world. The Bible is multidisciplinary. So if you're only focused on just one part, you need to pull in multiple parts. If you approach it from a structure standpoint, you're going to win the debate.
Yeah, specifically, we're talking about the historical accuracy of the Bible and the stories within. So we
I-
are looking at it from a specific lens and attacking it through the historical accuracy.
Okay, but it's not just historical, it's also philosophical, once again, the Bible it's an intersectionality text. So you have to approach it from that manner. If you look at it structurally, right? Because what you're doing right now is you're saying, okay, well, this, and this, but they have a theological argument on top of the narrative. That is how it's an indigenous way of knowing. You need to go back to Genesis, okay? And you need to see how they put Genesis into the text. You need to see how they midrashed all of the prophets. You need to understand midrash. You need to understand those things. That way you can form your argument about what the text really is versus then coming at it from a courtroom perspective.
But so the entire reason we're having this conversation is because Coco's going to have a debate whether the
Oh, no,
Bible is historically
I've been
accurate.
listening. Yeah, I've been
Okay.
listening.
So when we're talking about like the intersectionality and the philosophical quandaries that come with the Bible, that's really off topic because we're specifically talking about events within the Bible and how they correlate with outside events or other texts from different cultures in which the same events happen.
And what I'm telling you is, I'm not trying to be combative, okay? What I'm telling you is that all of those things are connected. They're not disconnected from the reality of what it is. So you have to come at it from a structural standpoint, because what your opponent is going to do is they're going to cherry pick verses, they're going to do this, and that. You need to say, okay, this is what the Bible is. It's resistance literature. So that means that there's a theological argument on top of a narrative. And then you need to connect the historical aspect of their culture with the narrative. And that is the crux of your argument.
That's not Coco's argument. The argument that Coco's making is that they're not connected, that they tell separate stories. Like they're not historically accurate.
The Gospels are not univocal. They're different theological arguments.
Yeah, but historically they should have a consistent line of like from point A to point B, these things happen. Because that's how time works.
Jesus is the anchor. He's the anchor of the story. But what I'm saying to you is that they all didn't agree. It's not univocal. So that's why there's inconsistencies in the text. Even though you do see a thorough line, there are going to be inconsistencies because different people thought different things. And you see that in the text, because that's why we had a whole Council of Jerusalem and all this other stuff, is because different people had different ideas. That's why there were so many different types of, ways of knowing Jesus as we get later on. You have to think the Gospels are not univocal. Paul's letters are not univocal. The only thing that anchors them is in Christ. That is the ontological center. The rest of it is theological opinions on top of a narrative.
So yeah, I just don't see why that would like in turn mean that the Bible is historically like accurate, even though like it isn't univocal. Like we would have a univocal story of like history is true. These events do happen or they don't. So if one story says these events happened and one story says these events didn't happen, they're not univocal. So we don't know what the historical accuracy is.
Well, it just really depends on how you look at the Gospels. Are they independent sources or are they not independent sources? Is the only independent source Mark and Paul? Are they even independent? You have to look at all of that. The scholars who take them as independent sources, the four Gospels, if there isn't a historical event mentioned in all four of them, then a lot of the times they're just going to accept that as probable to have happened because they treat them as independent sources. So at that level, you have four pretty early independent sources all testifying to an event that Jesus did. And so it really comes down to that. And
But like just because some of them agree in some places, but then we look in like within like a story or the same story within like a sentence or two of that like thing that they're agreeing upon, they disagree, right?
They don't disagree on any event explicitly. They might disagree on how Jesus' ministry was and stuff like that, as far as like how he portrayed himself and things like that. But
Let me ask you this question. How does resistance literature work?
I'm not sure, but
It depends on the society that they're resisting.
Okay, depends on the society, depends on their philosophy, right? That is the angle that you need to take. If it's resistance literature, okay, it doesn't mean that it's not historically accurate. It means that there are theological opinions attached to the narrative. That is how the Hebrew people, that was their way of knowing. It's an indigenous religion. So you need to go back through the Bible. You need to see how they stack theological arguments on top of narrative, but you also need to pay attention to the symbolism. The symbolism is also telling a story. Think about the Bible as a piece of cake, right? You have your narrative, you have your symbolism, and then you have your interpretation. You can't just think of it as just one flat thing. You have to look at it on the multiple layers so that you can understand what they are saying. It's resistance literature.
Yeah, but like at the end of the day, for debate on the specifics of historical accuracy, it doesn't matter if it's resistance literature or not. It matters if it's accurate.
If it's resistance literature, that means that it's tied to the history.
Not necessarily.
So,
What do you mean?
hold on, real quick. Were these books all written at the exact same time?
No.
Of course
They were
not.
obviously had an order in them, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So, is it plausible that the person who wrote the first book, that the person who wrote the second book, read the person's book on the first?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, then we can't hold any of this evidence to be other than just arbitrary now, because they're just taking what they've heard from someone else's story.
Yeah, it's like
Yes, that's why I said
it's
it's
like
how you.
or really quick, like it's but really quick, it's like blatantly clear that Matthew and Luke copied off of Mark, at least 88%.
I wouldn't say that's clear. They could have had the same source, so that's the reason why most of the material, because Mark is Peter's interpreter, so he's writing for Peter, and obviously, if Peter's like the head, disciple, then
But you're saying that he's writing for Peter. Like, we don't know who wrote those books, other than we can attribute one to Paul. Right?
And
Coco, you are aware that there are 3 theoretical sources that potentially come before Mark called Q, M, and L. These sources would have been written, before Mark, probably in the, rivaling at the time Paul's letters would have been written. So if they're actually drawing from these really early sources, that is something to consider. You'd have to consider that when talking about historical reliability.
You said what?
Q, M, and L, they're these theoretical sources.
M and L. Theoretical sources? What does that mean?
It means that we don't have the sources, but these authors were probably drawing from them, is what most scholars think. So yeah.
Where are they?
So one of the.
But wait, hold on, really quick. Yes, Sarah mentioned the synoptic thing, and I looked up an article today, and according to Bible.org, which I'm pretty sure is a pretty reputable source, but that's within an article that's coming from is that in the Bible.wordpress.com. It's basically saying that according to Bible.org that in total, 97% of Mark is duplicated in Matthew, and 88% is duplicated in Luke. And that's the problem of the synoptic problem. And there's word for word whole paragraphs, right, that are in Matthew and Luke that are later gospels that appear in Mark, which is an earlier gospel.
That doesn't mean that they copied each other. That can mean that they
That's
just
exactly what that means.
Can I finish? Can I finish? Can I? Oh my gosh! Why can't I finish? I don't get
What you're
that.
saying is silly.
Go ahead, J-Rob. Go ahead.
So you tell me if we share the same source, right? Like Peter, like Peter could have been a source. You tell me if that we share the same source, that we copied each other. Is that how we?
Well, no, but well, actually, go ahead, Chris the Painter, and then I'll go after you.
Yeah. So let's say that we both hear an audible version of The Lord of the Rings. Do you think that you could copy mine exactly 93 to 88 percentile on what I wrote and what you wrote if we heard
Do we
Word
live
for
at the
word.
do,
exact same time?
do we live in a oral like an oral
Are you saying
transmission?
that their memory back
Can
then
I
had better
finish?
learning
Can I finish?
capacity than us? Well,
Yes,
it
if
just
you
takes so long
oh
to
my
make
gosh, Chris, do you think that you and I might know some of the same songs word for word?
Yeah, without a
Okay,
doubt. But that's
beautiful.
hold on.
So
Hold on,
if you
wait,
wait,
J
can I
Rob, hold
finish,
on.
bro?
J
Can I
Rob,
finish,
how
bro?
many
Oh my
times do you
God, bro,
think
can
we
I
had
finish,
to
bro?
listen to said
I don't know why
songs?
y'all do that. Like I stay on mute when you make the points that you make. Why can't you do the same? Right? So if you and I can know the same song word for word, right? In this environment, they used to uh, quote like oral traditions, like in a like lyrical style. That's the reason why when you go to like Jesus's like quotes in Mark, right? That like you could look it up. Scholars say that when studying Mark, anytime he starts to quote Jesus, the structure completely changes. Like they can tell that it's coming from a Aramaic tradition and not like a Greek style structure. It's not being like it's completely a different style of it's in a particular uh particular style structure
Well,
that
yeah,
changes.
yeah. But that you're talking about like a song, right? Like a song is like a set number of lyrics, and oftentimes those lyrics are like repeated. These are like whole books that we're getting like a 97 percentile or 88 percentile of word for word copying, right? So like I would assume, I mean, like, given that, like, this is not just an accident, and like, if they're hearing it orally, I mean,
So
we'd probably have a lower
What do you
percentile,
think
so
but
about the
like,
I just wanted
Quran?
to say real quick. So like I was telling to Chris, right? So there is this hypothetical Q source called the Sayings Gospel. It's generally dated to the 40s or 50s AD. It's a theoretical source that existed before Mark that Mark is actually using, that Matthew and Luke can be using. M. Matthew's special source and L. Luke's special source are likely collections of oral traditions or earlier documents composed before 70 to 80 CE. It says frequently placed in the 40s or 50s or the first centuries, with some scholars suggesting an even earlier core, 1Q from the 30s, shortly after Jesus' death. So yeah, there are these hypothetical sources that are,
What's
floating
your first?
around that
Okay,
come before Mark
what
that
is your
have
first word right
historical
there?
information about Jesus.
What is your first word right there? You said what hypothetical?
Correct.
Okay, all right. So that means non-tangible to the real world other than the mind?
Hypothetical meaning that they believe that the source existed, we just don't have it.
Yeah. They believe it, but with no tangible evidence tied to this world. It's just a something of the mind,
Well,
yes?
no, it does have evidence. That's the reason why.
That's why they believe it.
It
It has
doesn't.
evidence.
It doesn't though. It doesn't have
where is he?
evidence.
Where's the
Then
The
why do
source?
only thing
scholars
it
believe
does
it?
is
All right,
is theoretical, right?
bro.
Yeah, why is it
I
called
love
hypothetical?
I love when non-scholar historians try to like think they know better than the scholars. That's crazy.
We're appealing to scholars who are bringing you the synoptic problem. What are you talking
Yeah.
about?
Like I don't. It's like it only equates when they are Christian
Christian
scholars,
scholars. Oh,
Christian
God.
narrative, or Christian mindset, and that's
Oh,
fine.
God.
And that's okay, because J. Rob, we've known how you played the entire time, And like when your sources come, I guarantee you it's Bible.org or Christian University or something to do with theology.
Well, what I said about
Well,
QMNL is
that's not
is
true.
secular scholars believe in QMNL.
What
Yeah.
secular scholars?
Bart Ehrman
So
does. Bart Ehrman believes in
Bart
QMNL.
Ehrman is just about as Christian and atheist at the same time as one human I've ever noticed.
Also,
Who are others? I mean, there are others that believe in QMNL. I can
Yeah,
definitely find them.
I mean,
But
have you
Bart
ever
Ehrman
read
definitely
any
does.
of Bart Ehrman's books though?
No, I
well,
haven't.
You haven't?
I
Oh,
don't think
okay.
I need to.
well,
You should read Mosquitoing Jesus.
Well, he thinks that a bunch of these events in the Gospels are actually accurate. And he thinks that there were sources before Mark
I
that
feel you.
actually
I
mention
understand.
details about Jesus'
It's just
life
okay.
and
Here's the
sayings.
thing.
wait, hold on,
When it
wait.
takes sure.
Bart Ehrman holds the Gospels to be accurate?
he holds a lot of things within them to be accurate. That's correct. That's why he lost his debate against Jimmy Akin on this topic.
Okay, I need to look into that.
Yeah, if I can actually show you all the things he thinks that are correct. Like
Yeah.
I can go down the list. There's like 60 things that he thinks Jesus actually did in the Gospels.
Yeah, send me
And he even thinks that Jesus said specific things as well.
Yeah, send me articles on that. I will look into that.
Yeah. I got you. I could do it even right now, but yeah.
But go ahead, Chris.
I'm so ADHD, bro. I completely forgot what I was saying, to be honest with you.
But what I was gonna say is when it comes to the synoptic problem and like this idea that like Matthew and Luke are copying off of Mark, it's Bible.org that's literally admitting to this. So even a Christian source is saying like, yes, they are copying. Like, it's like pretty guaranteed. I could look into other sources.
Most scholars would say if you include the hypothetical sources, even if we don't have, necessarily independent sources, like Matthew and Luke aren't necessarily independent sources to Mark or to them, to Matthew or whatever, we still have those theoretical sources that would be independent sources.
So do you give any other like theoretical thing in this world the probability of existing, like Bigfoot?
There's other hypothetical things in history that I do give high probability of existing, like Josephus and Luke could have been using the same hypothetical source to draw information
But
from.
I'm not asking about that. I'm asking specifically like we have credentials, video evidence, all types of shit for Bigfoot. Some are proven to be fake, some are less hard to do, some are really hard to do. But like there's always this thing in your mind that's saying because we have videos of this creature, it's a possibility to be real, or at least in your worldview, it has to be, correct?
That's not what I'm really saying with this hypothetical source stuff at all.
Oh, so you only hold hypotheticals to be true when it's based off something that doesn't fuck up your worldview?
They're just calling it a hypothetical source because we don't have the actual tangible source.
Exactly. So why even
But they
state
don't. They have
something
reasons
like
to
that
think that there
exists?
are
Because there's
hypothetical
evidence to support it. Hello.
or
like,
else they
where
wouldn't
aren't you
accept
getting?
it, or else most
There's
scholars
lots
wouldn't
of
accept that
evidence to
there's
support it.
Chris,
This is just common
the Q
knowledge.
document, the Q document is widely regarded, like even in scholar university or secular universities, 100%. This is something that they teach, and there is evidence behind Q. Right? It doesn't mean it's good evidence. It doesn't mean that you have to agree that it's true, but there are evidences pointing to the Q document, and it comes down to the synoptic problem. But I wanted to kind of go back to what JC was talking about. For one, do you want me to call you Proc or JC?
And JC's probably fine. Yeah.
Okay. So you don't agree that the Gospels are accurate either, do you?
So I think there are things within them that are accurate. Yeah.
But you don't take the account as itself, as a whole, as accurate, right?
Yeah. I don't think that everything in it is probably accurate. No.
Okay, so when we come down to this point, I think that Bart would actually have a further stance than you, JC. I think that if we were talking to Bart, he would say that he thinks that we could possibly piece together a historical Jesus, but it's not going to be anything like what the Bible is describing.
Oh no, I would disagree. This is why I need to bring up the. I can actually
Okay,
bring it
hold
up.
on. I have a question. So
Well, I'll
you're
watch
telling
the
me
debate.
that every scholar believes this Q shit?
Not every scholar. So
Okay, well,
Scholars
one said that.
disagree.
then that's all I fucking needed to hear. Don't come in
Oh,
here
oh my
checking
God.
me if fucking scholars
All
disagree.
right,
my
Chris.
Chris,
He's hurt.
there
He's
are
hurt.
secular
He's
scholars
hurt
who
right now.
agree with it. There are Christian scholars who agree with it. There are secular scholars who disagree with it.
But
There are secular scholars who disagree with it.
exactly.
The world's not as black and white as we want it to
Yeah,
be, right?
he's
Sure,
hurt, so
sure
he
it
has to
is.
straw man right now.
Sure it is. It's not even a straw man. The fact that you tried to equate it to appeal to authority when other people clearly
That's not an
have an
appeal to authority.
opposing view.
No,
Well,
I'm
what is
saying
an appeal to
that's not.
expert
Hold on, wait a
consensus
second.
is
That's
Hold
an
on, wait
appeal
a
to
second. Are we
consensus,
scholars,
not authority.
J-Rob, are we scholars?
That's not an appeal to
Wait, are
authority.
we scholars? Exactly, J-Rob, please be quiet.
what? It's not an appeal to authority. It's an appeal to expert consensus, which is not fallacious.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess my point would be like, so I watched the debate. I'm pretty sure that's when he done like last month, right? Or like a couple months ago, at least.
He might have got a call or something.
Sorry. I am listening to everything that you guys are saying. But also like Christ Before Jesus is doing like a tier list of like who he could beat in a fight in the atheist community, and so I used my second account to like.
That's diabolical.
Yeah, but
who's at the top of the list?
He said that cyber deconstruction would probably turn it into like bone mush, or like people like Amadeus, Mezzo, and Zach, and then like Justin and Bree are in like they'd probably win, and then like he put people in like other categories like it could go either way, and then I'm in I'd probably lose against Jaren, and I literally commented like, yeah, you probably win.
You gotta get big. Start hitting the gym, Coco. Don't stand for that.
But
don't stand for that.
But no, I'm listening to everything you guys are saying. I'm also taking notes, and like, yeah, for anyone who's wondering, I am debating somebody on, are the Gospels historically accurate? Or no, like the topic is the Gospels are not historically reliable, and I'm taking the affirmative. But yeah, I'm doing like research for that and checking it out. Yo, what's up?
So, I don't know if Chris wanted to chime in again, but what I want to say is also, something interesting is like, maybe to see if I could ask you this question.
What's up?
Do you think it's like probable that 4 people had experiences of Jesus after the crucifixion? At least 4?
I think it's possible. I don't think it's probable.
Do you think it's like plausible?
Yeah, it could happen. There's a chance, but it's not like it's not the most likely answer.
Okay, so you don't think it's likely that like 4 individuals had experiences, and by virtue of those experiences thought Jesus was alive?
I don't think it's the most likely answer. No.
Okay, so I would say it's likely that at least 4 individuals did. Why would you say no to that?
I would say it's likely at least one of these individuals did and convinced the others that they also had a similar experience.
But isn't that kind of a big assumption to say that the rest would just buy into whatever the first person was saying?
Well, they all bought into what Jesus was saying in the first place, so I don't think it's a huge leap of judgment to go from they already believe one guy who can't show any evidence, so why not believe the next guy who doesn't have any evidence?
But they're also claiming that Jesus appeared to them, right? So are they just making that up, or are they just going with the flow, or what's going on there?
I think the first guy, at least one of them is making it up, and the other, it could be all 4 of them are making it up. It could be like 2 of them saw something and convinced the other 2. I just don't think it's the most likely answer that all 4 of them had an interpersonal experience with what they thought was Jesus after he died.
Yeah,
Well, quick
because
question.
it's incredibly rare, right?
Oh, I mean, my question quickly is like, why, like, there were many different people claiming to be the Messiah who also got crucified in like fashion. Well, why don't we see that happening with anybody else?
We do. Specifically Julius, I think it's Julius Caesar came back as a resurrected person.
No,
People have
no, I'm
accounts of
talking
seeing
about,
him.
I'm talking about within this context of like Judaism, like Jews.
Well, even Julius Caesar, is there any like documentation that people who knew him thought they saw him alive again?
Yeah, actually, he like came back to Rome.
But like,
They
what
thought he was dead, and
sources?
then he got exiled, and then they thought he came back.
What sources say this? Is this like far after his time? Is this, sources that we can say it's probable that people at the time of him that knew him were saying that they saw him alive?
Yeah, I'll find the source for you, and I think if I can't find it right now, I'll DM it to you, but I'll look for it real fast.
Because like I hear a lot of this stuff, I just feel like a historian wouldn't say it's probable that people at the time of Julius Caesar claimed to have seen him alive. Like,
Oh, I don't think it's probable either, but there was a person claiming he was Julius Caesar resurrected who was going around and showing himself to people.
yeah. So I mean, with the Jesus thing, right? These are people that, these people that are seeing Jesus know Jesus. I would say, yeah, it's very likely that four individuals had experiences, and by virtue of those experiences, thought Jesus was alive. I don't take it that one of them just had an experience and the rest kind of followed in line. I mean, that's a big assumption to make, also. So yeah, I don't know about that, but yeah, I mean, let's just say Peter, James, and Paul, right? These are different places, different times. Paul and Peter, you can say, yeah. And then Mary and James. Usually those four are accepted. But yeah.
I find it really hard to like take the word of a oral tradition tribe and turn it into like historical fact.
I just, like, if it is the case that, four individuals had experiences like hallucinations, and then by those dreams or hallucinations thought that Jesus was actually alive, it's just like, I'm pretty sure we don't have any scientific documentation of something even like that, where, somebody dies and then shortly after people have these experiences and then think that the person is literally alive, to the extent where like four people or more have these experiences. I don't think there's actually a scientific case of that. Maybe we could talk about one or two or maybe three, but when we're talking about 4 or 5 or more, yeah, this gets to a territory where there's no scientific documentation for this. There's no parallels in history where I think a historian would say it's probable people were convinced that they had these experiences that convinced that someone was alive at this level. It's completely unique to Jesus.
Would you hold the same for alien abductions?
Alien abductions happen all the time, apparently, since the 20th century, right? But this does not happen all the time. This is unprecedented. When you get 4 or 5 individuals saying that they've seen the same person alive or
We
had
have hundreds of
experiences.
individuals who claim that they have been abducted from our planet, brought to a ship, and then like assaulted by aliens, but we don't
Yeah,
take their
but
word
that
for it just because
happens.
hundreds of people have seen it.
That's a natural phenomenon, it seems, because it repeatedly happens.
Do you think a natural phenomenon is like? I don't think aliens are a natural phenomenon.
They are a natural phenomenon.
They're natural, but I don't think they're a natural phenomenon, especially like abduction, right?
Yeah, people say they get abducted all the time, bro. That's my point.
Exactly. Why don't you believe them?
My point is that since they say that they get abducted all the time, it's a different thing than saying, because people don't usually say at all, really, not 5 people say that they've seen the same person that they know alive again after they've died, right? That does not happen. So what I'm saying is this does not happen in any other circumstance, really. And the alien abduction thing happens in many circumstances. So
would you
I'm
hold
just
to the same
showing that
thing?
it's just very unlikely that we're talking about. It drastically lowers the probability that this is some natural phenomenon in the case of Jesus.
Would you say it's the same case in people who like, let's say a family loses a family member, and then like their favorite bird was a robin, and then the next week the entire family's getting together to eat Sunday lunch, and they see a robin sitting in the window, and they all know like, oh, that's Grandpa. Do you think
No, I
that's
don't
the
think that's
same?
what's going on here. So
It's not a natural phenomenon, right?
So I mean, if you want to say they're convinced by some like natural phenomenon like that, like
No, it's supernatural, right? They think that their grandpa is in the robin.
yeah, I mean,
They
if you
think that
want to
his
believe
soul
that's
came
what
back as the robin to show
saying.
that he's still there.
I mean, Paul says Jesus was raised in a spiritual body. That's probably what they saw, Jesus in some type of body, transformed body or something like that. And I don't think it's like they're seeing some like celestial phenomenon and attributing that to a resurrection or something like this.
No, I agree.
Um,
I think it's
yeah.
there's a body that they're quote unquote seeing, but in the same way, like this family saw the robin. Like, are you going to take the word of the 6 family members eating Sunday brunch? Because more than 4 people saw it, and it's a supernatural phenomenon.
Well, do I have reason to believe, like, so you're saying it's a supernatural phenomenon? I don't take that to be a supernatural phenomenon.
You don't think putting a soul in a bird's body is a supernatural thing?
How do they know that the soul is in the bird's body?
Because Grandpa came for Sunday brunch.
How do they know that? How do they know it's Grandpa?
Because that's Grandpa's favorite bird. He always talked about him.
So, because it's Grandpa's favorite bird, it must be Grandpa?
It's
If
nowhere
after a week
near
after he dies, a
analogous,
bird
bro.
lands on your windowsill and it's the same type of bird your grandpa talks about, do you not think that's supernatural?
This is nowhere
No,
near
I don't.
analogous.
So you just think that's pure coincidence?
Yes.
Okay, same thing with Jesus.
So it's
bro.
my
He
thing
tried
is,
it though.
if it's a coincidence, like why doesn't it happen anywhere else in history? Don't we expect it to happen somewhere else in history, or be reflected in the scientific literature if this was some natural phenomenon?
We see it happening through different cultures that have resurrection myths.
Like,
Buddhism.
okay, and what are the sources that people saw people resurrected in the Buddhist tradition?
Yeah, the Buddha. People have seen the Buddha after he like ascended.
Are these people that know the Buddha?
Yeah, what's the
Yeah, they were
source?
followers of the Buddha.
Yeah,
So
what's the
people who
source?
knew the Buddha saw him resurrected, saw him alive.
After not it's not a technical resurrection, it's more of a spiritual like
Oh,
state that
okay,
he
so it's
entered.
Yeah,
not the
that's
But
not the
same.
same
So
thing.
it's
Yeah.
not the same.
you
Okay.
don't think that Jesus entered a spiritual state after he died?
Well, that's not. They believe that he was literally
His
alive.
physical body
Yeah,
resurrected.
You think his physical body, not a spiritual body?
His physical
it's a
body
physical, spiritual body. Yeah.
resurrected.
No, it's one or the other. You can't have a physical spiritual
His
thing.
Yes, you
physical
can.
body resurrected.
What's the definition of physical, real fast?
Yeah, made of matter,
Okay, what's the definition of spiritual?
immaterial.
Immaterial. So how can you have something made of matter that's also immaterial?
Yeah. Oh my
It's
gosh.
just
I'm
made of
not sure.
spiritual matter.
I'm not sure what you didn't understand about his
Didn't we just say
physical body.
spiritual is not made of matter?
You're not getting it. His
Hold on,
physical
wait. This shit's
body
not making sense.
resurrected. I don't get what he's not understanding.
Wait, so
So they
like,
saw a spiritual physical body, and spiritual means no matter, and physical means
No,
made of
no.
matter.
So, oh my gosh.
Who's talking,
So
J-Rob? I
Buddha's
wondered.
Buddha's physical body was still in the grave. Jesus's physical
No,
body was not in the grave.
Steelman,
Do
mute
you?
up, bro. Please.
Buddha never
Do,
died. Buddha ascended.
Mute up, mute up, I'll mute up, I'll mute up.
sorry, Steelman. You just have like background noise. That's the only thing. But
Look, I don't think there's a source where people had experiences with Buddha and thought he was alive, right? Like literally risen from the grave.
Buddha never died.
no,
He
hold on,
ascended.
wait. But like, what CF Joel is saying like makes sense, right? Like, spiritual is implying like immaterial, and then like physical is implying material. And you're saying that the body
EP
that they
Sanders
saw
has a good
after.
commentary on this. Benjamin knows what that means. I don't know what Paul is saying there, to be completely honest with you, but
Yeah,
either way,
it's a bit confusing. Like, is it like
it is a little
like
confusing, yeah.
because like Doubting Thomas puts his fingers through the holes of Jesus's hands, right? So that implies some kind of physicality, right? To
So
some
we're
extent.
fingering holes. Okay.
We're fingering holes, and then at the same time you're saying it's a spiritual body, so like it's not made of matter, so like he can't feel the holes in like Jesus's hands.
He can spiritually finger Jesus.
No, look, all I'm saying is, from what we understand, based on the data that we have to work with, is that people who have hallucinations or dreams of someone don't conclude that they are alive, right? Literally alive. Okay? And I think it's a fair assumption to say that these early Christians did think that Jesus was literally alive. And if you're saying that they had hallucinations and thought that, and you're talking about 4 or 5 different people that knew the person saying this, well, yeah, I've actually tried to find it. I've looked into this a little bit. I don't think there is any scientific example of this. I mean, maybe with 1 or 2 or 3 people in a group, maybe they can think a loved one is actually alive. Even that is very scarce, but you know, that may happen. But when you're talking about 4 or more people, and I'm just saying 4, right? Realistically, it's more than that, but 4 people saying that they've seen someone alive by virtue of a hallucination, that just doesn't happen.
Alright. Also, by the way, I might leave in like 8 minutes.
No, you can't. That's illegal.
I'm gonna join someone's live, but that's really it. But Steelman, what you got for me? Oh wait, I think his thing glitched out.
Yeah, he might be out in public. Might not have the best service right now.
If they were like,
And like,
go ahead.
don't get me wrong, JC,
Yeah.
PRK. Like, it's not that like, if Jesus is real, cool, whatever. I don't really give a fuck at the end of the day. But like, when we're talking about like possibility and plausibility of one event happening, like we have to be 100% genuine, and we can't special plead just because of like one religion says this is my God, so therefore we have to believe these people, right? Because
No, I
other
just
religions
think
make
I think it's genuinely likely that four people. I mean, people nowadays even think it's likely that Peter and Paul had experiences, independent experiences. That's at least two. I'm just saying two more people than that had experiences. We could say Peter, Paul, James, Mary. We could even say John. All these people are kind of named or alluded to in the earliest sources. And I just think that, yeah, all of them probably had some experience and they thought Jesus was alive. And I'm just saying, you know, that doesn't happen naturally. At least we don't have any record of that happening naturally.
I think there's more religions that you haven't looked into that have records of that. But
Nothing where a historian would say it's probable that these people at the time actually claimed it or believed it or anything like that. No, I don't think so.
I mean, it's also not probable that life exists, right? But here we are.
Yeah. Well, hold on real quick. What's up, Steelman? What you got for us? Did you want to contribute anything? No, I think your Wi-Fi might be bad.
Just want to... Sorry, there we go. Can you hear me now?
You're a little bit quiet, but we can barely hear you. You can like barely.
Here to cook right now. My chef.
Oh, it's kind of going in and out. It's like breaking up.
But I can you hear me now? I said, hey, Jared, how's it going?
Yeah, sorta, but it's like in and out. Like we'll get like long pieces of your sentences, then I'll break it again.
We can't hear
Oh my
shit,
God,
bro.
Please tell me you can hear me now.
Your connection is trash.
You can hear me. Oh, it's a connection. It's the connection. That's why.
I mean, now it's clear.
How about now?
Yeah, okay, now it's
Okay, perfect. I want to say, hey, J-Rob, how's it going? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Hey, J-Rob, how's it
Yeah,
going?
what up?
Hey, J-Rob, how's it going?
What up?
J-Rob. Ready?
Yeah, what's going on?
You ready?
Both of y'all have trash
Jay, are you
connection.
ready?
Yo, his connection is trash.
Okay.
Free profiles ass somewhere on the internet.
Coco, whose live you going to?
Lamb Lena.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna try to join the panel, and then I probably should get back to note taking after. I'll probably hang out there for like 2 hours, and then go back to like note taking.
That's the way to do it. Coke or Pepsi?
Hey,
That's the real
J-Rob, are
debate.
you ready to debate?
Pepsi. It used to be Coke, but like.
Hey.
Debate what? What's up, man? Yo, man, get you some better internet, man.
No, shoot, like, it's just glitching. Sorry, Steelman.
Just DM each other. That's probably the best.
I know you ain't talking, boy. Your fucking internet's as of mine.
Wait, actually, J-Rob, speaking of that, would you debate Hatim?
I mean, sure, on what?
Does the classical theistic God exist?
The classical, why the classical theistic God and not the Christian God?
It would be like the Christian God, but like classical theism. So he's omnipresent. He's all powerful. He has all the omnis. He's all powerful. He sees the future. He's all loving. All sorts of stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm saying why not the Christian God?
Oh yeah. It is gonna be the Christian God. So I think it's gonna be titled like. I don't even. I have to talk to a team to be honest. Let's see. Okay.
I mean, I'm down to debate the Christian God. I'm not trying to go into classical theism.
Are you Christian?
Yeah, he's Christian.
I'll turn this Christian.
But yeah, all right, man. Get you some better internet. Maybe we could
Oh, no. You want to debate me?
Man's in the background right now.
Maybe.
Bro, nobody can understand anything you're saying.
Oh, really? Except for Coco, right?
I can barely understand what you're saying, but like, yeah, the Wi-Fi is going in and out.
Yeah. Yo, he needs some help, bro. He needs Jesus, bro, for real.
Yeah. Yo, I already have Jesus. He's in my corner.
No, we got that.
Boom roasted, J-Rob.
But okay, with that,
Yo.
good.
I'll see you in Linus. Coco, I'll meet you over there.
Yeah, with that, I'm gonna call it a day. Yeah, I'll see you guys around.
Deuces. Let me screenshot.